What if the sea remembers what we choose to forget? Not in shipwrecks or storms, not in legends passed down around lantern light, but in quiet arrivals, in objects that drift without explanation, in visitors who appear without origin and vanish without farewell. On a cold morning in early 1803, along the windswept coastline of Japan's Hitachi province, a group of fishermen noticed something strange riding low in the tide. It was not shaped like any boat they had ever seen. The object drifted slowly toward the shore, turning slightly with the current, neither capsizing nor resisting the waves. It was circular, compact, balanced. Its lower half appeared to be made of pale wood, reinforced with metal bands. The upper section seemed almost transparent, lacquered panels or curved glass reflecting the early gray light of dawn. The fishermen hesitated. Fishing villages along the coast of Japan were no strangers to debris. Storms carried broken hulls, foreign cargo, and sometimes entire vessels off course. But this was different. This craft had no sails, no oars, no visible rudder, and it moved with an eerie steadiness, as though it had been built to float without direction. When it reached shallow water, the men waded forward and secured it with ropes. And that is when they saw her. Inside the circular vessel sat a young woman. She appeared calm, though her expression was distant. Her clothing was unfamiliar, fine fabrics layered with intricate stitching, unlike any garment worn in the region. Her hair was tinted a shade some later accounts described as reddish-brown. Beside her were small boxes, delicate fabrics, and what appeared to be scrolls marked with strange symbols. The fishermen spoke to her. She did not respond in any language they recognized. Historical accounts of the event were later preserved in regional documents and temple records. The vessel became known as an utsuro bune, literally a hollow ship. Descriptions remained remarkably consistent across multiple sources. The craft was estimated to be roughly 3 to 4 meters in diameter, the bottom half constructed from wood, the upper half fitted with window-like panels. Some accounts mention inscriptions carved into the interior walls, characters no one could identify. Others describe soft bedding inside, as if the vessel had been designed for long occupancy. The woman reportedly clutched one particular box protectively, refusing to let anyone examine its contents. The fishermen faced a dilemma. Japan, at that time, operated under Sokoku, a period of national isolation. Foreigners were viewed with suspicion. Unauthorized arrivals could bring serious consequences. Yet the woman showed no sign of aggression, no distress, only quiet alertness. After brief consultation with village authorities, the decision was made. She would be returned to sea. The vessel was towed back beyond the shoreline and released into the current. No official record exists of where it drifted next. And so the mystery began. What makes the Utsuro Bune incident endure is not its strangeness alone. It is the consistency of the details. Independent records from different areas recount nearly identical elements: the circular hull, the glass-like dome, the unknown script, the solitary passenger. This uniformity challenges easy dismissal. If it were pure folklore, one might expect exaggeration, embellishment, diverging versions over time, yet the descriptions remain restrained, observational, almost clinical. Scholars have proposed several explanations. One theory suggests the vessel may have been a foreign lifeboat, perhaps Russian or European in origin. The early 19th century saw increased maritime exploration, and accidental drift was not impossible. But the design does not align with known European craft of the period. Circular boats were rare, transparent domes even rarer. Others argue it was an embellished tale, a coastal legend that evolved with retelling. Yet the archival consistency complicates that view. Another hypothesis suggests the woman may have been a castaway from a distant region, her clothing misinterpreted by unfamiliar observers. Linguistic barriers can transform ordinary interactions into enduring mysteries. Still, questions remain. Why construct a circular vessel unless intended for prolonged survival? Why reinforce it with metal? Why equip it with windows? The design seems deliberate, self-contained, protective. Some modern observers have drawn comparisons to concepts far ahead of their time: sealed survival capsules, exploratory craft, even submersible technologies. But such interpretations risk projecting modern imagination backward. Perhaps the simplest explanation is also the most difficult to accept, that we lack sufficient information. Early 19th century coastal communities did not maintain exhaustive documentation. Much knowledge was passed orally. What survives in written record is fragmentary, yet even fragmentary evidence leaves a trace. The Unsolved appears in at least a dozen separate texts. Artists created woodblock prints depicting the scene: the circular craft, the poised woman, the curious fisherman. These images vary slightly, yet the core elements persist. Why? Because something happened. Whether mundane or extraordinary, an event occurred compelling enough to be recorded across regions. And it is here the mystery deepens. Consider the psychological dimension. Imagine standing on that shore. You live in a time of isolation. Foreign contact is limited. The world beyond your coastline is largely unknown. Then, one morning, a perfectly balanced circular craft drifts silently toward you, carrying a woman dressed in garments you cannot identify, speaking words you cannot understand. How would you interpret that moment? Through fear? Through curiosity? Through myth? Human perception shapes narrative. The fisherman may have witnessed something ordinary misinterpreted through unfamiliar context, or they may have encountered an innovation far removed from their technological frame of reference. History offers examples of both. But there is one detail that lingers. Emphasize her protectiveness over a single container she refused to surrender. Some later retellings speculate wildly: treasure, sacred relics, even severed remains. Yet no source confirms what it held. Its significance lies in the reaction. She guarded it. Not the vessel, not the scrolls, the box. Why? The object becomes symbolic, the unknown core within an already enigmatic event. Over time, fringe theories emerged. Some suggest the craft may have been an early experimental vessel. Others imagine encounters with advanced civilizations. A few stretch further still, framing the Unsolved as a precursor to modern, unidentified craft phenomena. Yet such speculation reveals more about contemporary fascination than historical evidence. The more grounded approach examines materials, construction methods, and regional shipbuilding techniques of the era. Researchers have noted that certain Japanese riverboats employed curved hull designs. Lacquered wood could appear glass-like in certain light. Metal reinforcements were not unheard of. Could a rare prototype have drifted from a distant province? Possibly. But prototypes usually leave documentation. This one does not. The silence in the record is almost as loud as the event itself. And then there is the question of the woman. No physical description survives beyond general notes, no confirmed identity, no trace of language, no recorded attempt at translation. She appears in history briefly and disappears. The ocean keeps its secret sufficiently. Centuries later, the Unsolved remains a subject of fascination among historians, folklorists, and mystery enthusiasts alike, not because it provides answers, but because it resists them. The story enters precisely at the intersection of plausibility and impossibility. There is enough detail to suggest reality, enough strangeness to invite wonder, enough absence to prevent closure, and perhaps that is why it continues to drift through memory like the vessel itself, balanced between explanation and imagination. As we consider this event, we are reminded that history is not a complete archive. It is a shoreline. Fragments wash up. Others vanish beneath the tide. What reached the sands of Hitachi in 1803 may have been a foreign castaway, a misunderstood invention, or something entirely different. We may never know. But somewhere in the currents of time, a circular craft once floated quietly toward shore. Inside it sat a woman no one could understand, and in her hands she held a box no one could open. The sea released her, then took her back. And the question remains, what else has drifted just beyond the edge of explanation, touching history briefly before disappearing again into the vast uncharted waters of the unknown? What if the most enduring secrets are not buried underground, but written plainly on paper? Not hidden in locked vaults or lost cities, but resting quietly in drawers, framed behind museum glass, or folded between ordinary correspondence. In 1897, in the quiet study of an English composer, a letter was written. At first glance, it appears almost playful. 3 short lines, 37 symbols, each one formed from curved strokes, arcs and semicircles arranged in different orientations. No standard letters, no punctuation, no obvious pattern to the untrained eye. Yet the man who wrote it was not careless with patterns. His name was Edward Elgar, and the letter would later be known as the Dorabella cipher. It was addressed to Dora Penny, a young woman who was part of Elgar's social circle. She was intelligent, musically inclined, and familiar with his fondness for puzzles. Elgar, after all, had already composed the famous Enigma Variations, a piece built around a musical theme he claimed was hidden in plain sight. He enjoyed concealment, he enjoyed structure, he enjoyed secrets. So when Dora received the letter composed entirely of looping symbols, she likely understood that this was no accident. The parchment itself is unremarkable, slightly yellowed with age, neatly written, no corrections or smudges, but the symbols are deliberate. Each character consists of 1 to 3 curved lines. Some are upright, others rotated, some open left, others right. A few appear nearly identical except for orientation. To the casual observer, they resemble decorative flourishes. To cryptographers, they resemble a substitution cipher. To musicians, they resemble notation. And to historians, they resemble a mystery that refuses to close. The letter contains 37 characters arranged across 3 lines, not long, not excessive, almost concise, which raises an immediate question: why encode something so short? Encryption is usually reserved for concealment of importance, strategy, political intrigue, confidentiality. But this letter was sent to a friend. Why disguise a friendly message? Some argue it was a private joke, a playful challenge, an intellectual flirtation, but over a century later, no one has conclusively decoded it, and that fact alone complicates this simple joke explanation. If it were trivial, why does it resist translation? Let us examine what we know. Elgar had a documented fascination with codes and puzzles. His notebooks reveal experiments with substitution systems and cryptographic patterns. He was not an amateur scribbler of random loops. He understood structure. The Dorabella cipher does not correspond neatly to known cipher alphabets of the time. It does not align cleanly with Morse code, shorthand systems, or common Victorian cryptographic practices. Modern researchers have applied frequency analysis to the symbols. Frequency analysis is one of the most powerful tools in code breaking. In English, certain letters appear more often than others: E, T, A, O. If the Dorabella symbols represent letters, then their repetition should reveal patterns. But the frequency distribution is inconsistent with straightforward substitution. Some symbols appear only once, others repeat, yet the overall distribution is unusual. This suggests either 1. It is not a direct substitution cipher. 2. It represents something other than language. 3. It encodes something context-specific only Dora could understand. One theory proposes that the curves correspond to musical notation. After all, Elgar was a composer. Curves can resemble slurs, phrasing marks, dynamic indications. Could each symbol represent a note, a chord, a melodic fragment? If played correctly, might it reveal the hidden message? Several musicians have attempted this approach. They mapped orientations to pitch shifts, arcs to intervals, line count to rhythm. The results produce music, but not clarity. The patterns do not resolve into a coherent phrase. Others propose a more intimate possibility. Perhaps the cipher was personal shorthand, a language invented between 2 friends. Inside jokes, shared references, a code meant never to be solved by outsiders. This explanation has elegance, but it also leaves discomfort, because Dora herself never solved it, or if she did, she never revealed the key. And so the cipher remains suspended in ambiguity. There is something profoundly unsettling about a secret that survives intact for more than a century. Paper decays, ink fades, but the meaning endures, locked. In the modern era, computational linguists have revisited the cipher. Advanced software can test thousands of substitution permutations in seconds. Algorithms can simulate statistical probability models. Yet no interpretation achieves consensus. Some partial translations produce phrases that almost make sense. Almost. But almost is not enough. There is always an inconsistency, a symbol that refuses alignment, a word that breaks structure. And so the code survives, not because it is impenetrable, but because it sits precisely at the edge of solvable and unsolvable. Consider the psychological dimension. Why do humans encode messages at all? To protect information, to create exclusivity, to elevate communication into something sacred. A cipher transforms ordinary language into ritual. It invites pursuit. It demands effort. Elgar may have understood this deeply. The Dorabella cipher becomes more than a letter. It becomes an experience, a small intellectual labyrinth, and perhaps that was the intention, not the message itself, but the act of trying. Yet there is another possibility, quieter, more subtle. What if the cipher is not meant to represent letters? What if the curves represent direction, or spatial movement, or emotional inflection? Some researchers suggest the arcs could correspond to phonetic stress rather than alphabetic substitution. Others propose it may encode a numeric sequence, mathematical constants, hidden coordinates. These interpretations stretch plausibility, yet they persist. Because the human mind struggles to accept unresolved structure. We want closure, we want translation, we want the hidden to become visible. But history does not always cooperate. The Dorabella cipher sits in museums and archives today. Scholars continue to publish papers. Amateurs continue to submit proposed solutions. Online communities debate interpretations. And yet, silence. The code remains intact. What makes it compelling is not scale. It is small, brief, unassuming. But it was written by a man who understood pattern, by a composer who built entire symphonies around concealed themes. That context gives weight. Imagine holding the letter, the ink lines delicate yet deliberate, the arcs flowing with rhythmic precision. You would feel intention. You would sense structure. You would know it is not random. And yet, it resists you. It refuses translation. Like a melody you almost recognize but cannot hum. There is an echo here of other mysteries. An object exists. Evidence exists. Documentation exists. But interpretation falters. The Dorabella cipher does not threaten civilization. It does not alter geopolitics. It does not conceal treasure. And yet, it unsettles us. Because it exposes a limit. The limit of decoding. The limit of inference. The limit of certainty. It reminds us that even in literate societies, meaning can be preserved beyond comprehension. Perhaps that is the quiet power of the cipher. It is not about what it says, it is about what it withholds. It stands as proof that some messages survive untouched, not erased, not destroyed, simply unread. And so we are left with questions. Did Elgar laugh quietly as he sealed the envelope? Did Dora attempt to solve it late into the evening? Did she ever uncover its meaning and choose not to share? Or is the answer simpler, a private note whose key was lost the moment its writer passed away? We cannot ask him. We cannot ask him. We cannot ask her. We can only examine the curves, trace them, rotate them, compare them, decode them, fail, and try again. Perhaps the Dorabella cipher was never meant to be solved universally. Perhaps it was meant to exist, suspended between art and code, between communication and concealment. A reminder that sometimes the most enduring mysteries are not grand monuments or lost civilizations. Sometimes they are 3 quiet lines on aging paper, 37 curved symbols, and a composer who understood that the power of a secret lies not in its revelation, but in its persistence. Some mysteries do not arrive quietly. They are discovered, stumbled upon, unfolding not through drifting vessels or cryptic letters, but through stillness. On August 20th, 1966, a young boy was flying a kite on a hill overlooking the city of Niterói, near Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. The hill was known locally as Morro do Vintame Hill, a rocky rise dotted with scrub vegetation and scattered boulders. It was not isolated wilderness. The city hummed below, power lines stretched across the skyline. Homes and streets lay within sight. Yet what the boy noticed that afternoon would disturb investigators for decades. Two men lay motionless on the slope. They were dressed strangely for the weather. Both wore formal suits beneath heavy waterproof coats. Their shoes were polished, their clothing neat. There were no signs of struggle, no blood, no visible injuries. And covering their eyes were handmade masks, crafted from thick sheets of lead, shaved roughly to fit over the eye sockets, with no holes to see through. The police were called. By the time authorities arrived, the sun was lowering. The hill was quiet. The men lay side by side, positioned as though they had simply reclined and never risen again. Beside them were small items carefully arranged: an empty water bottle, a notebook, a towel. The notebook would prove especially unsettling. Inside were brief instructions written in Portuguese: 1630, be at the specified place. 1830, swallow capsules. After effect, protect metals, wait for mask signal. The phrasing was cryptic, incomplete, suggesting preparation for something. But for what? The two men were later identified as electronics technicians from Campos dos Goitacazes, a city several hours away. They were described by colleagues and family as intelligent, methodical, and interested in science, particularly electronics and radio transmission. There was no history of mental instability, no known enemies, no apparent motive for self-harm. Autopsies were inconclusive. Because the bodies had been exposed to heat and time before discovery, toxicology results were limited. No clear poison was detected. No trauma was found. They had simply died. The lead masks became the defining feature of the case. Heavy, opaque, roughly cut. Why cover the eyes with solid metal? One theory suggests protection. Lead shields against radiation. Was the mask intended to block a flash of light? An electrical burst? The notebook's reference to protect metals and mask signal deepens the intrigue. Protect metals from what? Wait for what signal? And what would require swallowing capsules beforehand? The men had traveled to Niterói together days earlier. Witnesses saw them purchasing waterproof coats and bottled water. A waitress at a local cafe remembered them behaving calmly, paying in cash and asking for directions to the hill. Nothing frantic, nothing erratic, purposeful, planned. Investigators initially considered suicide, but the scenario did not align with typical patterns. No poison was definitively found, no suicide note beyond the cryptic instructions, no clear motive, and the lead masks remained unexplained. Another possibility emerged: experimentation. Brazil in the 1960s experienced a surge of interest in spiritualism, parapsychology, and UFO phenomena. Amateur radio groups and scientific hobbyists often blurred the line between technical experimentation and mystical exploration. Could the men have believed they were participating in an experiment, perhaps attempting to communicate with extraterrestrial intelligence, perhaps attempting to witness a phenomenon requiring eye protection? Some reports suggest the men were members of a small spiritualist electronics group, interested in contacting otherworldly forces using radio waves. If so, the capsules could have been hallucinogens. The lead masks could have been designed to shield their eyes from a predicted bright light. The signal could have referred to an anticipated event, perhaps celestial. Yet no conclusive link to any organization was proven, and no additional equipment, no radio transmitter, no antennas, were found at the scene. The hill itself adds atmosphere to the mystery. Morro do Vintém overlooks Guanabara Bay. The city's lights shimmer at dusk. At night, aircraft pass overhead. Electrical infrastructure hums faintly. It is a place where urban modernity meets quiet elevation, a fitting stage for something intended to be observed from above. Some locals reported strange lights in the sky around the time of the incident. Others dismissed these as ordinary aircraft. Such reports are difficult to verify, but they persist in retellings. There is something profoundly unsettling about preparation without explanation. The men purchased specific items, traveled deliberately, wrote timed instructions, arranged their belongings neatly, and then lay down, as though waiting. What were they expecting, and did it arrive? The phrase "after effect protect metals" remains particularly puzzling. Was this mistranscribed? Did it refer to protecting themselves from metal? or shielding metal from exposure. The ambiguity invites interpretation. Over time, fringe theories flourished. Some claimed the men were victims of a covert experiment involving high-energy electromagnetic pulses. Others suggested they accidentally exposed themselves to dangerous radiation. More imaginative interpretations proposed contact with a luminous aerial phenomenon, perhaps a UFO, the laid masks intended to shield from blinding light. But speculation expands easily where evidence is thin. The more grounded approach considers human psychology. Humans are capable of ritualizing science, of merging technical knowledge with spiritual belief. If the men believed they would witness or summon something extraordinary, they may have prepared accordingly. The capsules could have been intended to heighten perception. The masks could have been symbolic protection. The timing could have aligned with astronomical observation. And yet, no telescope, no measurement devices, no recording equipment. If this was an experiment, it left behind only the aftermath. 2 bodies, 2 masks, and a note that reads like an unfinished sentence. Decades later, the case remains unresolved. Official records close without definitive cause of death. No criminal suspects were identified. No organization claimed involvement. The lead masks sit preserved as evidence, tangible artifacts of intention, without context. Unlike many mysteries, this one leaves no grand monument, no lost city, no encoded parchment, just 2 ordinary men, on a hill, at dusk, waiting. There is a quiet tragedy here, not only in the loss of life, but in the absence of understanding. They believed something would happen, something significant enough to warrant travel, preparation, and shielding their eyes with metal. Whether that belief was rooted in science, faith, curiosity, or delusion remains unclear. But belief shaped their actions, and their actions shaped the mystery. The human desire to reach beyond ordinary perception is powerful. We build telescopes to see distant galaxies. We construct radio arrays to detect faint signals. We swallow substances to alter consciousness. We shield ourselves from light, radiation, noise. We prepare for contact, for revelation, for transcendence. The lead mask's case, as it would later be known, sits at that intersection, between curiosity and danger, between rationality and obsession, between preparation and silence. Standing on that hill today, one might see only a city view, wind moving through grass, traffic far below, no sign of the event, no lingering physical trace, and yet the questions remain. What were they waiting for? What signal did they expect? Did they miscalculate, or did they witness something no one else saw? The masks themselves are crude, hand-cut, functional. They do not resemble ceremonial objects. They resemble tools for shielding vision. But shielding from what? The sun does not require lead. Lightning strikes do not demand eye coverings. Radiation, perhaps, but no radiation was detected, unless whatever occurred left no measurable residue. That possibility, faint yet persistent, fuels ongoing speculation. History often preserves artifacts without narrative. We find objects divorced from context, a helmet, a tablet, a ring, and we reconstruct meaning from fragments. The lead mask's case offers fragments, but no cohesive reconstruction. It remains suspended, not supernatural, not conclusively criminal, not clearly accidental, just unresolved. And in that unresolved space, it lingers. 2 men climbed a hill in 1966. They prepared carefully. They followed instructions written by their own hand. They lay down. They covered their eyes. And they waited for something. Perhaps the most haunting detail is not the masks themselves, but the posture. They were not found in distress, not curled in pain, not reaching for help. They lay calmly, side by side, facing upward, as though watching the sky, and whatever they expected either never came or came too powerfully to survive. The hill remains, the city thrives, the masks endure in evidence storage, and the signal, whatever it was meant to be, has long since faded into silence, leaving only a question echoing across decades. What would drive 2 rational men to shield their eyes with lead and wait for the unknown? There are places where sound feels different. Not quieter exactly, not empty, but altered, as if the air itself absorbs more than it should, as if something in the landscape bends not only radio waves but perception. In the northern reaches of Mexico, where the deserts of Durango, Chihuahua, and Coahuila meet, lies a stretch of land locals call a zona del silencio, the silent zone. It is not marked by fences or warning signs. There is no dramatic boundary where normality ends. The desert simply stretches outward, low shrubs, pale sand, scattered rock formations, distant mountains trembling in heat haze. Yet for decades, stories have gathered around this region. Stories of malfunctioning radios, of compasses spinning without direction, of strange lights crossing the sky, and of a silence that feels heavier than it should. The silent zone first gained wider attention in the 1970s. In 1970, an Athena-sounding rocket launched from a U.S. missile range in Utah malfunctioned during testing. Instead of following its intended trajectory, it veered off course and eventually crashed deep within this desert region. The incident required an extensive recovery operation. American scientists and military personnel arrived to retrieve debris and equipment. The cleanup was thorough, reportedly involving the removal of contaminated soil and even temporary rail systems constructed to transport materials out. Why such intensity for a rocket crash? Officially, it was precautionary. The rocket carried experimental components, but the location amplified speculation, because locals had already been telling stories long before the rocket fell. Farmers in nearby communities claimed that radios frequently lost signal in specific areas. CB transmissions would fade. Static would replace voice. In some spots, even short-range devices struggled to maintain clarity. Visitors reported compasses behaving unpredictably. Some said the desert felt unnervingly quiet, not just from absence of people, but from a muted quality to the environment itself. Sound travels differently in arid landscapes. Heat gradients bend air currents. Vast open spaces reduce echo and reverberation, but perception often blends physics with feeling, and feeling, once shared, becomes narrative. The region lies within the Mapimi Biosphere Reserve, a protected area known for unique biodiversity, rare turtles, resilient desert flora, and unusual geological formations characterize the terrain. Geologists note that the land contains deposits of magnetite and other metallic minerals. Magnetite, in particular, can influence magnetic fields. High concentrations may affect compass readings locally. This offers a rational explanation for some anomalies, but it does not account for everything. In 1938, long before the rocket crash, a pilot named Francisco Sarabia reportedly flew over the region and experienced unexpected radio interference. Later accounts, though difficult to verify, suggest similar disruptions occurred sporadically across decades. Some researchers propose that the silent zone lies along the same latitude as the Bermuda Triangle and the Pyramids of Giza, implying some kind of global alignment phenomenon. But latitude alone does not create mystery. The Earth is vast. Lines intersect countless locations, yet the idea persists. Why? Because patterns comfort us. They suggest design. The desert itself plays a role in shaping experience. The land is vast and flat in some areas, broken by volcanic outcrops and shallow basins in others. Salt flats shimmer under sun. Distant objects distort in mirage. Heat bends light. Waves of air create illusions of movement. Silence, in such an environment, can feel oppressive. Without urban noise, without birdsong at certain hours, without wind, the absence of familiar sound becomes noticeable. Humans are attuned to environmental cues. When those cues shift, we interpret it as anomaly. Over time, additional stories accumulated. Travelers claimed that watches stopped working, cameras malfunctioned. Engines stalled briefly before restarting. Lights appeared over the horizon at night, luminous orbs gliding silently before vanishing. These accounts are anecdotal, none consistently documented with instrumentation. Yet they endure, because enough people reported similar sensations to create a pattern of belief. Scientists who visited the area conducted electromagnetic measurements. Most findings aligned with natural variations caused by mineral deposits and atmospheric conditions. No consistent electromagnetic field anomaly was confirmed, But that does not entirely dissolve mystery, because mystery often resides not in measurable extremes, but in perception. The silent zone's name itself shapes experience. Call a place silent, and visitors will listen more carefully. They will notice absence. They will interpret subtlety as significance. Yet dismissing all accounts as imagination may oversimplify. Meteorites have fallen in this region with unusual frequency. The desert floor contains fragments of extraterrestrial rock discovered over decades. Some speculate that mineral composition or geological structure may influence atmospheric electrical activity. Ball lightning, a rare luminous phenomenon, has been reported in arid regions worldwide. Could unusual atmospheric combinations here create fleeting lights? Possibly, but fleeting phenomena resist study. There is another layer to the story. During the rocket recovery operation in the 1970s, rumors circulated among locals that U.S. personnel had discovered something more than debris. Some claimed scientists seemed more interested in the land itself than in the rocket remains. Stories emerged of soil samples taken extensively, of temporary facilities erected quietly. Official documents confirm the recovery mission. They do not confirm hidden discoveries, yet secrecy, even routine bureaucratic secrecy, breeds speculation. When military operations intersect with isolated geography, imagination fills gaps. The Silent Zone became a magnet for UFO enthusiasts in the late 20th century. Camps were established, expeditions organized, amateur researchers arrived with recording equipment and cameras. Many reported nothing unusual. Some reported experiences, glowing objects in the distance, feelings of disorientation, radio static where there should have been signal. But reproducibility remained elusive. The desert resists laboratory conditions. Each visit yields different variables: temperature, humidity, solar activity. Electromagnetic interference can fluctuate naturally. Solar flares disrupt radio communication globally. Geomagnetic storms ripple through Earth's magnetosphere. The Silent Zone lies under the same sky as everywhere else, and yet it carries reputation. Reputation alters perception. Imagine driving into the desert at dusk. The horizon stretches uninterrupted. Your phone signal weakens, not unusual in remote areas. Your compass shifts slightly, perhaps influenced by metal in your vehicle. Your radio crackles. You are aware of the stories. Every anomaly feels amplified. Every silence feels intentional. Psychology and geography intertwine, but there remains a subtle intrigue. Why this region? Why sustained reports across decades? One possibility lies in its geology. Magnetite-rich soil can distort localized magnetic readings. Underground mineral deposits can reflect radio waves unpredictably. Temperature inversions can trap and bend sound. These factors combined might create intermittent communication issues. Intermittent is key. Because consistency would allow controlled study, intermittence breeds uncertainty, and uncertainty sustains myth. There is also the cultural layer. Rural communities preserve oral histories. Stories of lights and signals pass through generations. Each retelling refines narrative. What begins as minor interference becomes anomaly. What begins as meteor becomes unidentified object. This does not invalidate experience. It contextualizes it. The Silent Zone represents a meeting point between environment and expectation, between mineral and myth, between measurable variation and perceived mystery. Standing there at midday, under a relentless sun, the land feels ordinary, hard, dry, unforgiving. At night, beneath a canopy of stars unpolluted by city glow, it feels vast beyond comprehension. Isolation magnifies awareness, and awareness magnifies anomaly. Perhaps that is the deeper function of places like this. They strip away noise, they remove distraction, and in doing so, they force us to confront the limits of our instruments, both mechanical and mental. No confirmed portal is open there. No permanent magnetic distortion has been mapped. No consistent radio blackout zone has been documented beyond natural variation. Yet the name remains: the Silent Zone. A reminder that silence itself can be unsettling, because silence invites interpretation. It leaves space for possibility. It removes distraction from the subtle. And when humans encounter subtlety without explanation, we search for narrative. Maybe the desert holds no extraordinary force. Maybe it holds only mineral deposits and atmospheric conditions. Or maybe it holds something less measurable, a psychological mirror. A place where expectation meets emptiness, where technology falters briefly, just enough to provoke doubt. Where a rocket once fell unexpectedly, where meteorites lie scattered, where locals still speak of flickers in the sky. The desert does not answer questions, it absorbs them. And when you leave, returning to cities full of signal and certainty, you carry a quiet sensation with you, a memory of static, of horizon, of air that felt different, and you wonder, was it truly silent? Or did it simply amplify the sound of uncertainty within us? High in the Orshens Mountains of Romania, where dense forests press against steep ridgelines and mist drifts slowly through pine branches, there stands an ancient complex of stone. At first glance, it appears almost modest. Low walls, circular platforms, upright stone pillars arranged with deliberate spacing, weathered blocks cut with surprising precision. But as you walk deeper into the site, something begins to feel different. The geometry reveals itself. The symmetry, the alignments. And you begin to realize that this was not simply built, it was calculated. The site is known as Sarmizetese Regia, the ancient capital of the Dacian kingdom, before its conquest by Rome in 106 AD. To historians, it is a political and religious center. To archaeologists, it is a monumental example of Iron Age engineering. To others, it is something more enigmatic, because the arrangement of stone here does not resemble ordinary settlement. It resembles intention on a scale difficult to dismiss. Approaching the complex, one first encounters terraced platforms carved directly into the mountainside. Massive limestone blocks form retaining walls that stabilize the slope. Above them, circular sanctuaries sit elevated like observatories. The most striking structure consists of a large circular formation, concentric rings of stone posts and pillars arranged around a central space. From above, the design appears deliberate, almost mathematical. Archaeologists have studied the orientation of these circles for decades. They align with cardinal directions. Certain pillars correspond with solar events. During the summer solstice, light strikes specific stones in predictable ways. The precision suggests astronomical awareness, but awareness alone does not explain scale. Consider the labor required. The Dacians carved and transported heavy limestone blocks from distant quarries. They shaped them with tools that, by modern standards, seem primitive. Yet the cuts are straight. The placements precise. The spacing consistent. No mortar binds the stones. They stand by balance and design. Why invest such effort on a mountain plateau? Historical accounts from Roman sources describe the Dacians as formidable and organized. Their king, Decebalus, resisted Roman expansion fiercely. Sarmizetese Regia functioned as both fortress and sacred center. But fortresses do not require solar alignments, and sacred centers rarely require defensive terraces. The site blends roles: political, spiritual, astronomical, strategic. This blending fuels speculation. Some researchers propose that the circular sanctuaries functioned as calendars. By tracking shadow movement across pillars, priests could determine seasonal shifts, agricultural timing, ritual days. This interpretation aligns with practices across ancient civilizations, but there are details that remain puzzling. The number of pillars in certain circles does not match simple lunar or solar cycles exactly. Some alignments appear symbolic rather than strictly functional. Additionally, excavations have revealed an advanced water management system. Stone channels carved to guide spring water into controlled flows, water and stone, light and shadow, geometry and elevation. The integration feels intentional beyond mere symbolism. Standing within the largest circular sanctuary, you notice acoustics shift subtly. Sound seems to carry differently between pillars. Voices echo faintly, even in open air. Was this designed or incidental? Acoustic engineers have tested similar ancient sites worldwide, noting that certain configurations amplify or focus sound. Could ritual chants here have resonated intentionally? Possibly. But documentation is sparse. The Dacians left few written records. Most knowledge about them comes from Roman chroniclers, often biased, focused on conquest. So interpretation relies heavily on stone itself, and stone does not speak plainly. In the 20th century, as archaeological study expanded, new layers of curiosity emerged. Measurements of magnetic fields around the site showed minor variations, not extreme but noticeable. Some researchers suggested the mountain's geology may contribute to subtle electromagnetic anomalies. These claims remain controversial. Natural variation in mountainous terrain is common, but when subtle anomalies intersect with sacred architecture, imagination activates. Fringe theorists proposed that Sarmazet was more than a religious site. They describe it as an energy platform, a place where earth currents converge, a nexus point of ley lines. These ideas lack empirical confirmation, yet they persist because the geometry appears too precise to dismiss easily. There is also the matter of destruction. When Roman forces conquered the region, they dismantled much of the site. Pillars were broken, structures burned, sacred spaces disrupted. Why such thorough dismantling? Perhaps as symbolic dominance, perhaps to prevent continued resistance. But some suggest Rome recognized something significant about the site's function. Speculation thrives in absence of clarity. Let us return to measurable facts. The circular sanctuary consists of timber and stone components originally combined. Wooden beams once connected stone bases, creating a hybrid structure. Wood decays. Stone remains. We see fragments, not completion. Reconstructed models suggest roofed segments, open central altars, processional pathways. It was not chaotic. It was organized. Some archaeologists compare the site to Stonehenge, though smaller in scale, similar in astronomical alignment. Yet Sarmizegetusa differs in complexity. Multiple circles exist. Rectangular structures nearby add contrast. A large sun disk carved into stone rests within the complex, often called the Andesite sun. Its radial grooves resemble a clock face. Interpretations vary: calendar, ritual altar, symbolic solar representation. The Dacians revered celestial bodies. Roman texts mention priestly classes skilled in astronomy. If so, Sarmizegetusa could have functioned as both observatory and temple. But here lies the deeper intrigue. Why build at such elevation? The plateau is not easily accessible. Transporting materials required immense coordination. The site commands visibility across valleys. Strategic advantage, yes, but astronomical observation could occur elsewhere, unless elevation held spiritual meaning. Mountains across cultures symbolize proximity to the divine. Perhaps Sarmizegetusa was designed as a bridge between earth and sky. Stone grounding, light guiding, water flowing, geometry aligning. The environment enhances the effect. Mist moves unpredictably across pillars. Wind carries scent of pine. Silence dominates, broken only by distant birds. You feel removed from modern rhythm, and in that removal, the site feels alive. Not supernatural, but intentional. There is a difference. Intentional architecture creates psychological response. Precision communicates purpose, even when that purpose fades from memory. Archaeological excavations continue. Artifacts recovered include tools, ceramics, fragments of ritual objects. None conclusively reveal the sanctuary's ultimate function. They suggest daily life intertwined with ceremony, not purely sacred, not purely military. Interwoven, some modern visitors claim to feel subtle vibrations within the circles. Such experiences are subjective, but subjective experiences shape reputation, and reputation shapes myth. The term energy platform gained popularity in alternative literature in the late 20th century. Proponents cite magnetometer readings, personal sensations, and geometric symmetry. Skeptics emphasize geological normalcy and cultural projection. Both sides circle the same stones. Neither can fully claim them, because meaning dissolved with the Dacian language itself. When Rome conquered, culture fragmented, records lost, interpretations left to descendants, centuries removed. The stone circles endure. They weather rain, frost, wind. They remain aligned. Aligned with sun, aligned with horizon, aligned with horizon. Standing at the center of the larger circle, imagine a priest marking solstice sunrise. Imagine smoke rising from ritual fire. Imagine coordinated chants resonating between pillars. Imagine watchers tracking stars. Now imagine centuries passing. Rome arriving, destruction, silence, forest reclaiming terraces, memory thinning, until rediscovery, until excavation, until modern observers arrive with cameras and measuring tools. We seek clarity. But the stones offer pattern without explanation, and perhaps that is their power. They represent capability beyond written legacy, proof that knowledge once existed here, structured, organized, deliberate. Whether that knowledge involved only astronomy and ritual or something more nuanced remains uncertain. There is no confirmed electromagnetic vortex, no verified energy amplification, but there is undeniable precision, and precision demands respect. Sarmazzictitusa Regia stands as a reminder that advanced understanding does not require modern technology, that ancient societies calculated light and shadow with sophistication, that they integrated architecture with landscape intentionally, and that when context fades, even the most practical design can appear mysterious. The mountain remains, the circles endure, and each year, during solstice, sunlight still touches stone exactly as intended, nearly 2,000 years ago. We can measure the angle. We can calculate the alignment. We can map the geometry. But we cannot ask the builders why they chose this precise arrangement. What belief drove them? What vision guided their planning? What meaning did they attach to these circles carved into mountain air? The answers lie somewhere between ritual and science, between faith and function, between the known and the lost. And as mist drifts once more between pillars, obscuring edges and softening stone, the site reminds us quietly, precision survives. Purpose does not always. And sometimes the greatest mysteries are not hidden underground or sealed in cipher. They stand in open air, aligned with the sun, waiting for interpretation that may never fully arrive. Maps feel permanent. We trust them without hesitation. Lines define borders. Dots mark cities. Small shapes represent land rising confidently from surrounding water. A coastline printed in ink seems fixed, undeniable, a statement of geography itself. But what happens when a landmass printed on maps for centuries cannot be found? In the warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico, roughly 70 kilometers north of the Yucatan Peninsula, there was once an island called Bermeja. For more than 400 years it appeared on nautical charts. Spanish cartographers in the 16th century marked it carefully. Later European maps included it without question. It was not depicted as myth or uncertainty. It was simply there. A small island, sometimes drawn in red ink, sometimes noted near reefs or shoals. Sailors used it as a reference point. Governments acknowledged it. Boundaries were calculated with it in mind. And then, in the late 20th century, when technology allowed for precise verification, it vanished. The story of Bermeja begins in the early age of exploration. Spanish navigators mapping the Gulf described an island positioned at approximately 22 degrees 33 north latitude. It appeared in official documents. It was referenced in maritime logs. Over generations, cartographers copied earlier charts, preserving its place in the ocean. No major controversy surrounded it. It was simply part of the map. But geography is not static. The Gulf of Mexico is shaped by powerful currents, hurricanes, sediment movement, and shifting sands. Coral formations rise and erode. Sandbanks appear and disappear. The sea reshapes edges quietly, persistently. Still, islands do not simply evaporate, especially not without record. In the 1990s, Bermeja's existence became more than a cartographic curiosity. It became geopolitically significant. Under international maritime law, land extends territorial waters. Exclusive economic zones, particularly those involving offshore oil rights, depend on precise coastal measurements. If Bermeja existed, Mexico's maritime boundary would extend farther north into potentially oil-rich areas. If it did not exist, the boundary would retract, so expeditions were launched. Mexican authorities commissioned research vessels equipped with sonar, satellite navigation, and depth-measuring instruments. Coordinates long associated with Bermeja were carefully approached. The sea was calm, the sky clear. But where the island was expected, there was only open water. Soundings revealed ocean depth. No reef, no shoal, no submerged remnant, nothing. It was as though the island had never existed at all. Initial explanations were practical. Perhaps early sailors misidentified a temporary sandbar. Perhaps fog or mirage created the illusion of land. The Gulf is known for atmospheric distortions. Fata Morgana mirages can project distant objects above the horizon, making ships appear as floating islands, but mirages are fleeting. They do not persist across centuries of documentation. Some historians suggest cartographic error. Early maps often copied earlier sources without independent verification. If an original chart included Bermega, later mapmakers might have replicated it uncritically. Cartography, especially in the 16th and 17th centuries, blended observation with assumption. Blank spaces were sometimes filled to maintain navigational coherence. Yet Bermeja appeared repeatedly in official Spanish documents, not just decorative charts. Was it simply a phantom island? Phantom islands are not unheard of. Ibersil appeared on maps of the Atlantic for centuries before being dismissed as myth. Sandy Island was marked near Australia until modern surveys disproved its existence. Human error propagates. Once an island enters record, it can endure long after reality dissolves. But Bermeja's case carries an additional layer. It coincided with oil negotiations. In 2000, Mexico and the United States signed a maritime boundary agreement dividing the Western Gulf. The absence of Bermeja influenced final territorial lines. This timing fueled suspicion. Conspiracy theories emerged quickly. Some claimed the island had been deliberately destroyed, perhaps submerged through covert means to alter maritime boundaries. Others speculated that powerful interests manipulated maps or suppressed evidence. There is no verified proof supporting such claims, but geopolitics invites imagination. The Gulf of Mexico is economically vital. Energy resources amplify stakes, and when land vanishes in proximity to oil fields, suspicion grows. Scientists return to data. Could tectonic activity have submerged Bermega? The Gulf's seabed includes ancient carbonate platforms and salt domes. Geological shifts occur over long timescales, but sudden disappearance of a stable island within recorded history would require significant seismic evidence. None exists. What about erosion? Low-lying coral atolls can erode under storm activity. Hurricanes reshape coastlines dramatically. Over centuries, a fragile island might diminish. But complete disappearance without trace, without submerged reef structure, that is less common. Satellite imaging has scanned the area extensively. No consistent anomaly. No shallow platform matching historical dimensions. Water depth suggests the area was unlikely to support a permanent island in recent centuries, which leads to a quieter possibility. Bermeja may have been mislocated from the beginning. Navigational methods in the 16th century relied on celestial measurement and dead reckoning. Longitude was particularly difficult to calculate accurately before the development of precise chronometers in the 18th century. A small error compounded over time could shift coordinates significantly. Perhaps the island described in early logs lay elsewhere entirely, misplotted and perpetuated through cartographic inertia. If so, Bermeja's disappearance may be less about vanishing land and more about accumulated navigational drift. But why was no alternate candidate identified? Modern surveys across surrounding regions have not revealed a plausible displaced island matching historical descriptions, which returns us to perception. Imagine a 16th century sailor after weeks at sea. The horizon shimmers. Cloud banks hover low. Sunlight reflects off distant waves. Fatigue blurs certainty. An object appears, darker than surrounding water. An island, perhaps. It is marked. It is recorded. Subsequent sailors expecting it look for it. Sometimes they glimpse shapes in similar region. Expectation reinforces observation. Cartographers formalize it. Over decades, the island becomes fact, until someone with satellite precision asks the simplest question: is it truly there? And the answer comes back empty. The psychological weight of a disappearing island is significant. We assume geography is stable. We trust maps implicitly, but maps are interpretations. They are human attempts to translate vast space into symbols, and symbols persist longer than landscapes. Bermeja's absence challenges confidence, not dramatically, not catastrophically, but subtly. If an island can exist for centuries in record and then dissolve into non-existence, What else do we assume unquestioningly? The Gulf continues unchanged. Ships pass through coordinates once assigned to land. Oil platforms operate in agreed zones, but the name Bermega lingers in archives. In old atlases, in footnotes of maritime history, researchers still revisit the question periodically. New sonar sweeps, deeper analysis. But the ocean remains blank where ink once suggested solidity. Some modern oceanographers propose that Bermeja may have been a transient coral formation, elevated slightly during certain tidal conditions centuries ago, later eroded fully. Coral ecosystems are fragile. Climate shifts, storms, and sea level changes could erase small formations gradually. Yet historical maps sometimes depicted Bermega with more substance than a mere sandbar. Descriptions varied, which again complicates certainty. Perhaps Bermea was never a single thing. Perhaps it was a combination of minor features, reefs, shoals, optical illusions, aggregated into one conceptual island. Once conceptualized, it gained permanence, even when physical evidence faded. This case reveals something profound about documentation. Repetition creates reality. When an object is printed enough times, it gains authority. Authority resists revision, until measurement intervenes. And even then, doubt lingers, because the emotional imprint of existence outlasts correction. Today, if you sail to Bermeja's historical coordinates, you will find nothing but open sea, waves rising and falling, currents shifting, sky reflected in blue expanse, no rocks breaking surface, no birds circling over hidden reef, just water. And yet, for 4 centuries, that same stretch of water carried a name and shape. Bermega, an island that shaped boundaries, influenced law, appeared in textbooks, then dissolved into ambiguity. It leaves us with a quiet awareness. Maps are powerful, but they are not infallible. Geography can change, records can mislead, assumptions can calcify into accepted truth, and sometimes the most unsettling mysteries are not about hidden structures or secret codes. They are about absence, about something once confidently present, now undeniably gone. Bermeja does not haunt the Gulf with ruins. It haunts it with possibility, a reminder that even in an age of satellites and sonar, certainty can erode like sand under persistent tide. And somewhere in the long lineage of cartographers who traced its outline carefully in ink, there must have been one who truly believed they were marking land. But today, the ocean keeps its surface smooth, as if nothing had ever risen there at all. Some places become mysterious because of what is seen there. Others become mysterious because of what was expected there and never fully explained. In August of 1966, 2 men climbed a hill outside the Brazilian city of Niterói. They carried no weapons, no visible scientific equipment, no supplies for camping. Only a small bag containing notebooks, a bottle of water, and 2 crudely cut masks made from sheets of lead. By nightfall, they were dead. And what they were waiting for has never been understood. The hill is known as Morro do Vintame Hill, a modest rise overlooking Guanabara Bay. It is not remote wilderness. Homes and streets stretch below it. Power lines cut across the skyline. In the 1960s, the region buzzed with the optimism of modernization. Radios, televisions, electrical infrastructure spreading rapidly across Brazil. Yet that afternoon, the hill felt quiet. A local boy flying a kite noticed something unusual among the rocks. 2 figures lying side by side. They were dressed formally. Each wore a suit, overcoat, and polished shoes despite the warm weather. And covering their eyes were thick, opaque masks shaped from heavy lead, fitted roughly over the face, blocking vision entirely. Authorities were alerted. When police arrived, they found no signs of violence, no struggle, no defensive wounds. The bodies were positioned almost peacefully, as though reclining intentionally. Beside them was a small notebook. Inside were instructions written in Portuguese. 1630, be at the specified place. 1830, swallow capsules. After effect, protect metals, wait for mask signal. The language was fragmented, cryptic. Capsules were never recovered. No containers were found. Autopsies failed to determine a clear cause of death. The bodies had been exposed long enough that toxicology results were inconclusive. No detectable poison, no trauma, no obvious medical condition. Just two men who had traveled deliberately to a hill and died waiting. Their names were Miguel Jose Viana and Manuel Pereira de Cruz, electronics technicians from Campos dos Goitacazes, a town several hours away. They were not drifters, not criminals, not known thrill seekers. Friends described them as intelligent, methodical, and deeply interested in electronics and radio communication. That detail would become central to speculation, because Brazil in the 1960s was not only modernizing technologically, it was also experiencing a surge in spiritualist movements. Electronics clubs often blended science with mysticism. Amateur radio enthusiasts experimented with frequencies while simultaneously exploring spiritualist philosophies about energy, vibration, and contact with other realms. Could Viana and de Cruz have believed they were conducting an experiment? The masks, after all, were made of lead. Lead shields against radiation. It blocks certain forms of energy. Why would two electronics technicians fashion crude eye coverings from radiation-shielding metal, unless they anticipated a flash, a burst, a luminous signal? Some witnesses later claimed to have seen strange lights in the sky around the time of the men's deaths. Reports of unidentified aerial phenomena were not uncommon in Brazil during that era, but such reports are notoriously difficult to verify. Lights in the sky can be aircraft, meteors, atmospheric distortions, or misinterpretations amplified by expectation. Still, the note remains unsettling. Swallow capsules. What capsules? Hallucinogens? Chemical stimulants? If so, where were they? No traces were recovered. The phrase "protect metals" is equally puzzling. Protect metal from what? Or protect oneself from metal? And what was the mask signal? The ambiguity fuels imagination. Investigators initially considered suicide, but the method seemed unusually elaborate. No suicide note beyond the cryptic instructions. No history of depression. No financial distress. The meticulous planning, purchasing waterproof coats, traveling deliberately, writing timed instructions, suggested anticipation rather than despair. Another theory proposed accidental poisoning from self-administered substances. Perhaps the capsules were experimental drugs intended to induce altered states. Without proper dosage control, they could have caused fatal reactions. Yet again, no chemical residue was confirmed. And then there is the posture. They were found lying calmly, side by side, not clutching throats, not convulsing, not in visible distress, simply reclined, eyes shielded, facing upward, as though waiting for something in the sky. The hill itself offers no obvious hazard. No toxic plants, no environmental radiation, no natural gas vents. It overlooks a modern city, hardly an isolated wilderness capable of harboring exotic dangers unnoticed, which leaves belief. Belief can drive extraordinary preparation. If the men believed they were about to witness an intense burst of light, perhaps from an aerial craft, perhaps from an electrical experiment, shielding their eyes with lead might have seemed rational within their framework. The capsules could have been part of a ritualistic sequence, perhaps intended to heighten perception, or to prepare for contact with what remains unknown. Some researchers discovered that the men were reportedly associated with a small group interested in communicating with extraterrestrial intelligence using radio equipment, but no transmitters were found on the hill, no antennae, no recording devices. If communication was intended, it left no physical trace, which raises another possibility. What if they were not summoning something, but expecting it, waiting for a signal from above? Waiting for an arrival, waiting for confirmation of something they had previously observed. The notebook's timing suggests coordination. 4:30 p.m. arrival, 6:30 p.m. ingestion, then wait, as if following a schedule agreed upon with an unseen source. Over time, the case gained a name, the lead masks case. It became a fixture in discussions of unexplained deaths. Skeptics emphasize human fallibility. They argue that misadventure, poor judgment, or accidental poisoning likely explains the event, that the absence of clear cause is due to limitations in forensic science at the time. that adding extraterrestrial speculation only obscures probable human error. Supporters of more extraordinary explanations point to the radiation shielding masks and references to signals. They suggest that if an intense burst of light occurred, perhaps accompanied by electromagnetic interference, it might have left no easily measurable residue decades later. They note that several residents reported unusual aerial lights around that period. But reports are not proof, and proof remains elusive. Standing on Morro du Ventame today, it is difficult to reconcile the quiet hillside with the gravity of the mystery. Children play. Tourists take photos. Traffic hums below. The city lights shimmer at night. No trace of the event remains. No marker commemorates it. Only archived photographs of 2 bodies and 2 crude lead masks. The masks themselves are almost mundane in construction, hand-cut sheets, folded roughly to contour around the face. No straps, gravity alone kept them in place. They were not professionally engineered, they were improvised, which makes their presence even more human. These were not secret government devices, not high-tech shielding apparatus. Just 2 men who believed lead over their eyes was necessary. Belief is powerful. It can override common sense. It can create internal logic invisible to outsiders. Perhaps they expected an experience so intense it required preparation. Perhaps they believed their eyes would be harmed by what they were about to witness. Or perhaps they misinterpreted instructions from someone else entirely. Some theorists suggest the possibility of third-party involvement, someone who instructed them to carry out the sequence. But no evidence of coercion or conspiracy surfaced. No additional suspects were identified. The hill kept its silence. What makes the lead mask's case enduring is not dramatic violence or elaborate cover-up. It is its simplicity. 2 rational men, a hill, a note, 2 masks, and no explanation. There is something haunting about preparation without conclusion. They followed their plan precisely. Arrived at the designated time, waited, swallowed capsules, covered their eyes, and then nothing. No recorded flash, no confirmed signal, no rescue, only stillness. The case forces uncomfortable questions. How far will curiosity drive us? How strongly can belief shape action? When does experimentation become fatal? And what happens when intention collides with uncertainty? We may never know whether Viana and de Cruz witnessed something extraordinary in their final moments. We may never know whether the capsules were miscalculated, or whether the signal they anticipated never came at all. But the image remains fixed in memory, 2 figures on a hill. Lead shielding their vision, waiting for light, waiting for contact, waiting for something beyond ordinary explanation. And in that waiting, whatever the truth, they crossed from expectation into silence. Leaving behind one of the most unsettling questions in modern mystery, what signal were they listening for? And did it arrive? Most ancient texts whisper. They are written on fragile parchment, faded ink barely clinging to fibers worn thin by time. They fragment, decay, disappear into dust. But one scroll did not whisper. It was carved, etched, cut deliberately into sheets of copper so that its message would not fade, and what it recorded was not poetry, not prophecy, not law. It recorded treasure. In the mid-20th century, in the barren cliffs near the Dead Sea, archaeologists uncovered a series of caves that would forever alter our understanding of ancient history. Within them were the Dead Sea Scrolls, fragile manuscripts containing biblical texts, sectarian writings, and reflections from a community long vanished. But among the parchment scrolls was something different, heavy, metallic, rolled into a tight cylinder. It would later be known as the Copper Scroll. Unlike every other scroll discovered in those caves, this one was not written in ink. It was engraved into thin copper sheets, hammered flat, and then rolled. To read it, scholars had to carefully cut the metal open, as unrolling it risked cracking the brittle surface. When they finally deciphered the text, what they found was startling. The scroll did not contain scripture, it contained a list. A catalog of hidden caches of gold, silver, vessels, and sacred objects, buried in specific locations throughout the region. More than 60 entries, each one describing precise amounts. 17 talents of silver, gold vessels, sacred garments. Directions accompanied each entry, references to valleys, aqueducts, cisterns, ruins, landmarks that may have been obvious 2,000 years ago. But today, many of those landmarks no longer exist. The copper scroll is generally dated to the 1st century AD, around the time of the Roman occupation of Judea and the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 AD. It is widely believed that during this period of political upheaval, wealth was concealed to prevent confiscation by Roman forces. But here is where the mystery deepens. No other Dead Sea Scroll reads like this. The copper scroll is practical, almost administrative. It does not preach, it instructs. It itemizes. It reads like a treasure inventory. Why carve such a list into copper? Why ensure its survival with such permanence? Copper is heavy, difficult to work, expensive. The creators wanted this record to endure, but if the goal was to recover the treasure later, why hide the scroll in a cave along with other sectarian texts? Why not keep it accessible to those who needed it? Unless the scroll itself was also meant to be hidden. Scholars debate its origin. Some suggest it was written by the Essenes, the Jewish sect believed to have inhabited the Qumran community near the caves. Others argue its language and style differ from the other scrolls, implying it may have originated elsewhere. The language is Hebrew, but the tone is utilitarian. There is no overt spirituality in its phrasing, just instructions, amounts, locations. One entry references a location in the ruin that is in the Valley of Acre. Another speaks of treasure buried beneath the steps at the entrance to the aqueduct. Precise, yet vague. Enough detail to suggest authenticity. Enough ambiguity to frustrate modern seekers. Since its discovery, countless expeditions have attempted to locate the treasures listed. Archaeologists have mapped ancient aqueducts, ruins, and caves. They have surveyed the Judean desert using modern technology, satellite imagery, ground-penetrating radar, detailed excavation. Yet no cache matching the immense wealth described has been conclusively recovered. Some small artifacts have been found across the region, coins, vessels, fragments, but nothing on the scale the scroll promises. Which raises a critical question. Was the treasure ever real? One theory proposes that the scroll may describe temple treasures hidden during the Roman siege of Jerusalem. If so, the wealth would have been enormous. Sacred vessels, ceremonial objects, gold accumulated over generations. But Roman historical records describe the looting of the temple. Triumphs in Rome displayed captured treasures. Could the copper scroll refer to a different hoard? Perhaps a secondary reserve concealed in haste. Another theory suggests the scroll is symbolic, a coded document representing spiritual wealth rather than literal gold. But the precision of weights and measures argues against pure allegory. The measurements are specific, the quantities substantial. It reads like accounting. Then there is the possibility that the treasures were indeed hidden and later recovered quietly by those who knew the terrain. Perhaps the scroll was left behind accidentally, or intentionally as a decoy. The Judean desert is vast and unforgiving. Caves dot the cliffs, seasonal floods reshape valleys, landmarks erode. Over 2 millennia, geography shifts. A cistern collapses, an aqueduct crumbles, a marker stone disappears. Even if the treasure existed, locating it today would be extraordinarily difficult. The desert itself plays a role in preserving the mystery. The cliffs near Qumran rise sharply above the Dead Sea's salt-heavy waters. The air is dry, almost sterile. It was this dryness that preserved the scrolls for centuries. It is also what allows imagination to linger. Walking through the region, you feel history pressed into stone. Every cave could conceal something, every hollow echo with past footsteps. The copper scroll adds weight to that feeling. It transforms the landscape into a map of possibility. But there is something else. The scroll lists not only treasure, but division of treasure. In some entries, fractions are mentioned, shared deposits. This implies organization, coordination, a network of individuals aware of the caches. And yet, no additional documents confirming retrieval have surfaced. If the treasure was recovered, no record remains. If it was not, it lies somewhere still. Some researchers have suggested that the scroll itself may contain hidden codes beyond surface instructions. Perhaps numeric patterns correspond to geographic coordinates. Perhaps there are layers of encryption within the Hebrew phrasing. But no convincing cipher has been proven. The simplest interpretation remains the most tantalizing. Someone hid vast wealth. Someone recorded its location, and the record survived. But the treasure did not reveal itself. The idea of buried treasure is ancient and powerful. It combines greed with hope, mystery with promise. The copper scroll amplifies this idea because it exists physically. You can see the engraved lines. You can trace the letters carved into metal. It is not legend passed orally. It is artifact, and yet artifact without fulfillment. There is a haunting dimension to that. The creators expected the scroll to outlast parchment. They ensured durability. They anticipated time. Did they expect eventual recovery, or did they fear that retrieval might never happen? The Roman destruction of Jerusalem scattered communities. Exile fractured networks. Those who knew the locations may have perished. Knowledge can vanish in a single generation. Without continuity, even the clearest map becomes useless. Today, the copper scroll resides in a museum, preserved behind glass. Visitors read translations. They imagine caves filled with gold. They picture priests lowering vessels into hidden chambers. They wonder if somewhere beneath desert rock, untouched wealth remains sealed in darkness. But the deeper mystery may not be the treasure. It may be the intention. Why preserve the record so permanently? Was it hope? A message to future descendants? An act of faith that one day stability would return and hidden riches could rebuild what was lost? Or was it something more complex, an internal ledger never meant for outsiders, preserved accidentally by catastrophe? The desert keeps its silence. Excavations continue sporadically. New technologies probe beneath sand and stone. But the scroll's promise remains largely unfulfilled. It stands as a reminder that history can preserve instructions long after the context for using them has vanished. We hold the list, but not the key. We read the directions, but the landscape has shifted. We know the amounts, but not the outcome. And so the copper scroll lingers between artifact and enigma, between inventory and myth, between certainty and absence. Somewhere in the Judean hills, beneath rock and sediment, layered over centuries, perhaps gold still rests in darkness, or perhaps it was found long ago by hands unrecorded. Either way, the scroll survives. Cold, heavy, silent, waiting. And in its engraved lines lies one of the most compelling questions history offers. When someone carves treasure into copper to outlast time, were they preserving wealth or preserving hope? In the rolling countryside of Zhejiang Province, China, there are fields that look unremarkable. Rice paddies shimmer in shallow water. Farmers move steadily between rows. Hills rise gently in the distance, covered in green. For centuries, nothing about this landscape suggested that beneath it lay something extraordinary. And then, in 1992, a villager decided to drain a pond. The pond had long been considered bottomless. Locals told stories of mysterious depth, of fish that vanished, of dark water that never revealed its floor. But when pumps began removing the water, something unexpected emerged. Stone. Not natural rock. Not uneven bedrock, but smooth carved walls descending into darkness. As the pond emptied further, an opening appeared, a vast underground chamber cut directly into solid rock. This was the first of what would become known as the Longyu Caves. To date, at least 24 separate caverns have been identified beneath the fields of Longyu County, each one massive, each one mercilessly carved, each one astonishingly uniform in craftsmanship. Entering one of these caverns feels disorienting. The ceiling rises more than 30 meters overhead, supported by thick stone pillars left deliberately in place. The walls stretch across enormous open spaces, sometimes spanning thousands of square meters. And covering every surface, walls, ceilings, columns, are parallel chisel marks, evenly spaced, uniform in angle, consistent in depth, as though carved by a single disciplined hand. But that is impossible. The scale alone defies simplicity. Estimates suggest that more than 1 million cubic meters of rock were removed to create the known chambers. To put that in perspective, this would require the coordinated labor of hundreds, possibly thousands of workers over years, perhaps decades. Yet there is no clear historical record describing their construction. No mention in official chronicles. No surviving inscription within the caves themselves. The walls are blank except for the repeating tool marks, which raises the first unsettling question: who built them? Chinese history is exceptionally well documented. Dynasties recorded projects meticulously. Canals, palaces, defensive walls, large-scale undertakings rarely escaped written record. And yet, the Longyao Caves appear to have been constructed around 2,000 years ago during the Qin or Han dynasty periods, eras rich with documentation. So why the silence? The mainstream explanation suggests the caves may have been ancient quarries. Perhaps stone was extracted for construction elsewhere. But this theory falters quickly. In a quarry, stone is removed efficiently. Surfaces are irregular. There is little reason to carve ceilings with consistent decorative patterns. Yet in Longyu, every surface is shaped deliberately. The chisel marks are not random scars, they are rhythmic, aesthetic, almost ornamental. Moreover, if stone was removed in such volume, where did it go? There are no nearby monuments built from identical material. No massive structures matching the estimated output. No spoil piles large enough to account for the excavated rock. The absence of debris is almost as puzzling as the excavation itself. Another theory proposes that the caves were storage facilities, perhaps granaries, military shelters, or flood refuges. The region experiences seasonal rains and river overflow. Subterranean spaces could provide protection. But again, the scale complicates this view. The chambers are enormous, far larger than necessary for ordinary storage, and their ceilings slope deliberately downward in subtle angles, preventing water accumulation. This suggests careful engineering, not accidental excavation. Some chambers feature carved platforms, stone stairways, and side alcoves. In one cave, a relief carving of a horse was discovered. In another, inscriptions that appear later additions, not original construction markers. But no definitive builder's mark, no dedication plaque, nothing to anchor the site firmly to a known ruler or purpose. The geometry of the caves intensifies the mystery. Pillars are spaced evenly, often forming grids. Ceilings maintain consistent slope angles. Measurements reveal alignment across separate chambers, as though constructed from a master plan. And yet, each cave is isolated from the others, separated by thick rock walls. If connected intentionally, passages could have been carved between them. But they were not. Why build separate monumental chambers rather than one interconnected complex? Engineers studying the caves note that maintaining structural integrity at such scale requires precise understanding of load distribution. Leave too little rock, and collapse occurs. Leave too much, and efficiency suffers. The Longyu builders achieved remarkable balance, and they did so without modern surveying equipment, or at least none that survived. The tool marks offer additional intrigue. They are parallel lines carved at roughly 60-degree angles, repeating across every surface. Some researchers propose that the grooves were left intentionally as reinforcement patterns, reducing rock flaking and increasing stability. Others suggest the marks may have served acoustic purposes. Sound behaves unusually inside the chambers. A whisper can travel farther than expected. A shout echoes in layered resonance. Could the grooves amplify or diffuse sound intentionally? It is difficult to prove, but their consistency implies purpose. Then there is the lighting question. These caverns descend into darkness. Constructing them would require illumination. Oil lamps, torches, ventilation for smoke would have been necessary, and yet no significant soot residue coats the ceilings. If thousands of workers labored here, where are the traces of prolonged fire use? Some archaeologists argue that ventilation shafts may have existed and later collapsed. Others suggest construction occurred gradually, allowing smoke to dissipate naturally through openings before full enclosure. But again, no clear documentation supports these hypotheses. As with many ancient mysteries, speculative interpretations emerged over time. Some claim the caves were ceremonial halls, underground temples designed for ritual gatherings. The sheer scale of certain chambers could accommodate hundreds of people. The acoustics would enhance chanting or musical performance. but no definitive ritual artifacts have been recovered. Others suggest astronomical alignment. Yet being underground, direct celestial observation would be limited, unless certain openings once allowed light to enter strategically. But evidence of such openings is inconclusive. Fringe theories venture further, proposing that the caves were part of a lost advanced civilization, that their precision exceeds the capabilities of ancient technology, that unknown methods were employed. Such claims often overstate the mystery. Ancient societies were capable of extraordinary engineering: the Great Wall, the Terracotta Army, massive canal systems. The Han Dynasty was not primitive. But even acknowledging historical capability, the silence around Longyu remains peculiar. Imagine standing at the base of one chamber. The air is cool. The stone walls rise like a carved cathedral. Light from the entrance filters downward, fading into shadow. Every inch of surface bears the same angled grooves, no graffiti from ancient times, no decorative flourishes beyond structural carving. It feels purposeful, but withheld. The rediscovery in 1992 was accidental. Local villagers reportedly drained several ponds, revealing multiple cave entrances. Some chambers had remained flooded for centuries. Water preserved them, perhaps obscured them intentionally. Could they have been sealed deliberately after construction? The region's folklore speaks little of vast underground halls, which suggests knowledge of them may have been lost long ago. If the caves served a strategic purpose, military, storage, or refuge, perhaps secrecy was paramount. If they were ceremonial, perhaps their function faded with dynastic change. If they were quarries, perhaps records were lost during political upheaval. China's history includes periods of book burning and cultural suppression. Knowledge can disappear swiftly when regimes shift. Today, the Longyu caves attract tourists and researchers alike. Lights illuminate interior spaces. Walkways guide visitors across once hidden floors. Yet even in modern illumination, the original question persists: why build so much, so precisely, and leave so little explanation? The caves challenge assumptions about permanence. They were monumental, yet they vanished beneath farmland, forgotten, submerged, until chance revealed them again. Perhaps that is the most striking aspect. Not their size, not their engineering, but their silence. For centuries they existed unnoticed beneath everyday life. Rice grew above them. Children played nearby. Storms passed overhead. And below, vast chambers waited, patient, unrecorded. When we encounter structures like Longyu, we confront a limitation in historical continuity. We assume that if something large happened, it must be written down, but writing can be lost. Stone endures longer than ink. And sometimes, stone keeps its secrets more effectively. The Longyu caves do not present dramatic danger. They do not claim treasure. They do not promise revelation. They simply exist. Massive, measured, unexplained, and in that existence lies their quiet power. Because they remind us that human capability can surpass documentation, that labor can leave mark without leaving narrative, that beneath ordinary landscapes may rest extraordinary effort that required coordination, knowledge, and vision, but whose purpose dissolved into time. The fields above Longyu continue to yield crops. Farmers continue routine cycles, and below, chisel marks remain frozen in stone, repeating endlessly across walls shaped by hands long gone. Perhaps one day, new evidence will surface. An inscription uncovered, a historical text rediscovered, a clear explanation emerging from archival shadows. Or perhaps the caves will remain as they are now, grand spaces carved with precision and preserved in silence. A testament to human ambition, and to how easily even monumental achievement can slip beyond memory, buried not in myth, but beneath water and soil, waiting for someone curious enough to drain the pond. Some mysteries leave behind ruins, some leave artifacts, and some leave only light. On the night of September 22, 1979, high above the Earth, a satellite recorded something that should not have been ambiguous. It was part of a system known as Vela, a series of satellites designed by the United States to detect nuclear detonations anywhere on the planet. These satellites did not rely on rumor or eyewitness testimony. They relied on physics. They were engineered to recognize a specific signature. A nuclear explosion in the atmosphere produces a distinct double flash of light. First, an intense burst lasting milliseconds, the fireball expanding rapidly. Then, as the shock wave pushes outward and the atmosphere reacts, a second, slightly longer flash appears. This pattern is unmistakable to trained instruments, and that night, one of the Vela satellites detected exactly that. The flash occurred over a remote stretch of ocean near the Prince Edward Islands, south of Africa. No cities nearby, no known testing sites, no official announcement. Just a double flash recorded in silence. At first, analysts assumed the explanation was obvious: a covert nuclear test. During the Cold War, nations sometimes tested weapons secretly, attempting to avoid political fallout. But such tests were risky. Satellites like Vela existed precisely to detect violations of international treaties, and this flash bore the signature. The data showed two distinct pulses. The timing between them matched the pattern associated with atmospheric nuclear detonations, yet the location complicated matters. The southern Indian Ocean is vast and isolated. Few ships pass through the area. No immediate seismic readings confirmed a blast. No widespread radioactive fallout was reported in populated regions. Still, within weeks, speculation spread among intelligence agencies. Some suspected South Africa, which at the time had an active nuclear program. Others whispered about collaboration between nations. Israel was mentioned quietly in classified discussions, but nothing was confirmed publicly. An official panel was convened in the United States to investigate. Scientists examined satellite data carefully. They considered alternative explanations. Could the sensor have malfunctioned? Could sunlight reflecting off a meteor create a similar pattern? Could rare atmospheric phenomena mimic a double flash? The panel eventually concluded that the signal was likely not a nuclear explosion. They cited possible sensor anomalies. They pointed to the absence of definitive fallout evidence. But not all experts agreed. Some scientists within the intelligence community maintained that the data strongly resembled prior confirmed nuclear tests. The signature was precise, the double pulse unmistakable. Yet ambiguity prevailed. Part of the difficulty lay in environmental sampling. A nuclear detonation leaves radioactive isotopes detectable in air and ocean currents. In the weeks following the event, aircraft collected atmospheric samples in the southern hemisphere. Some traces of iodine-131 were detected in sheep in Australia, but iodine-131 can originate from other sources. The connection was debated. Without conclusive debris, certainty slipped away. The Vela satellite itself was aging. It had exceeded its expected operational lifespan. Could its sensors have degraded? Engineers reviewed its performance history. While some minor issues existed, nothing definitively explained the flash as malfunction. The geopolitical climate of 1979 intensified suspicion. The Cold War was in full tension. South Africa faced international sanctions and isolation. Rumors of nuclear cooperation circulated in intelligence circles. A clandestine joint test in a remote ocean location would have been strategically plausible, but plausibility is not proof, and official acknowledgement never came. Over time, the event became known simply as the Vela incident. It occupies a peculiar space in history, not fully confirmed, not fully dismissed, just suspended. Imagine the scene at the moment of detection. Far above the Earth, the satellite's sensor registers a sudden spike. Milliseconds later, a second spike. Data streams into monitoring stations. Analysts pause, because they know what that pattern usually means. But there is no public announcement, no shockwave felt by nearby population, no mushroom cloud photographed, only electronic confirmation, light in the dark, then nothing. The ocean below remains unchanged. Waves roll. Wind moves across water. If an explosion occurred, it left no visible scar, which raises a subtle possibility. What if the event was smaller than typical nuclear tests? A low-yield device, experimental, designed to minimize fallout and detection. Such a test might produce a detectable double flash but limited environmental residue. But again, speculation. Scientists also considered natural phenomena. Meteors entering the atmosphere can produce bright flashes. Some can fragment in ways that create multiple pulses, yet the Vela sensors were calibrated specifically to differentiate between nuclear signatures and meteoric events. The light curve recorded in 1979 aligned more closely with nuclear profiles than meteor ones. Lightning superbolts were another candidate. Rare but powerful lightning strikes can produce intense light bursts. However, the double flash timing did not match known lightning patterns precisely. Each alternative explanation accounted for some features. None accounted for all. The ambiguity deepened when declassified documents emerged decades later. Some internal communications suggested that certain intelligence analysts believed strongly that a nuclear test had occurred, but political considerations may have influenced public conclusions. Acknowledging an unclaimed nuclear detonation in a volatile region could have escalated tensions dramatically, so uncertainty became convenient. Over time, the Vela incident drifted from headline to footnote, but among scientists and historians, it remains unresolved. Because the instruments recorded something, and instruments do not speculate, they measure. The double flash remains in archived data, frozen in time. Two pulses separated by fractions of a second, a fingerprint without a hand. The mystery forces uncomfortable reflection. If a nuclear test occurred undetected publicly, what does that reveal about transparency? If it did not occur, what phenomenon can so closely mimic its signature? Our technological systems are designed for precision. Yet here, precision yielded doubt. Consider the vastness of the ocean below the flash. Remote waters conceal many things. Submarines move unseen. Military exercises occur quietly. Natural phenomena unfold without witness. An explosion there, especially one carefully timed and measured, could evade immediate scrutiny. And yet, decades later, no nation has claimed responsibility. No definitive whistleblower has stepped forward. No conclusive evidence has emerged to close the case. The Vela incident sits between physics and politics, between censor and silence. It reminds us that not all mysteries belong to ancient ruins or forgotten civilizations. Some belong to modern technology, to satellites orbiting quietly overhead, to data streams interpreted by humans navigating geopolitical tension. In 1979, the world stood at a delicate balance of power. Nuclear arsenals defined global strategy. Trust was fragile. Detection systems were vital. And one of those systems blinked. Twice. Perhaps it was a secret test. Perhaps a malfunction. Perhaps a rare atmospheric anomaly we still do not fully understand. The ocean does not answer. No monument marks the location. No crater rests on the seafloor confirmed by survey. Only a pair of light pulses captured in orbit. As years pass, the event recedes further into history. New technologies emerge. New satellites replace old ones. But the archive signal remains unchanged, a brief flare of brightness in an otherwise ordinary night. The Vela incident teaches something subtle. Certainty depends not only on measurement, but on interpretation. Even when physics appears clear, context complicates conclusion. And sometimes, the most powerful events are those witnessed only by machines. No human eyes saw the flash directly. No photographer captured it. Only sensors registered the pattern, which leaves us with a haunting image. High above a dark ocean, a burst of light expands rapidly, then another, then darkness. The water below absorbs whatever occurred. The world continues unaware. And decades later, we are left asking, what truly happened in that isolated stretch of sea? Was it human hands testing power quietly, or a natural phenomenon mimicking our own destructive signature? The flash lasted only seconds, but its echo remains, not in the sky, not in the ocean, but in the unresolved space between detection and explanation. There is a small island off the coast of Nova Scotia, Canada, that looks almost peaceful from a distance. Thick clusters of oak trees cover its interior. The shoreline is uneven, marked by stones and quiet inlets. Seabirds circle lazily overhead. Fishing boats pass at a distance, barely slowing as they cross the calm waters of Mahone Bay. Nothing about Oak Island appears extraordinary at first glance. And yet, for more than 2 centuries, people have dug into its soil with relentless determination. Because in 1795, 3 young men noticed something strange. A depression in the ground, a circular patch beneath an old oak tree. And from that small indentation would emerge one of the longest-running treasure hunts in recorded history. The story begins with Daniel McGinnis, a teenager who reportedly saw flickering lights on the island one evening. Curious, he returned the next day with two friends, John Smith and Anthony Vaughn. Beneath the oak tree, they discovered a shallow depression, roughly circular, with signs that the earth had once been disturbed. They began to dig. At about 2 feet down, they encountered a layer of flagstones. Below that, soil. At 10 feet, a layer of oak logs carefully placed. At 20 feet, another platform of timber. The pattern continued, wooden layers every 10 feet. It was as though someone had constructed a shaft intentionally, reinforcing it at measured intervals. Word spread quickly. Treasure rumors ignite imagination easily. Soon, more investors joined the effort. Excavation expanded. At roughly 90 feet below the surface, workers claimed to discover a flat stone bearing strange symbols carved into its surface. The markings were later interpreted, though translation remains debated, to read something like 40 feet below, 2 million pounds are buried. This stone became known as the 90-foot stone, and it transformed curiosity into obsession. If accurate, the message implied extraordinary wealth hidden deep within the earth. But as digging continued, something unexpected occurred. Water began flooding the shaft. Despite attempts to bail it out, the pit filled rapidly. Further investigation revealed an elaborate network of flood tunnels extending from nearby shoreline into the shaft. These tunnels were lined with stone and packed with coconut fiber, a material not native to Nova Scotia. The engineering appeared intentional. The more excavators dug, the more the pit resisted them. Collapse. Flooding. Mechanical failure. Over the next 2 centuries, numerous companies invested fortunes attempting to retrieve whatever lay beneath Oak Island. Each attempt seemed to reach a critical depth before encountering structural disaster. Entire platforms collapsed. Machinery was swallowed. Lives were lost. And yet, definitive treasure remained elusive. Mainstream historians propose that the Money Pit, as it came to be known, may have been a natural sinkhole or a misinterpreted geological feature. Nova Scotia contains limestone bedrock prone to collapse and flooding. Perhaps early diggers misread natural layers as artificial construction. Perhaps the 90-foot stone was exaggerated or even fabricated to attract investors. Because early accounts of its discovery vary, the original stone is now missing. Only transcriptions of its inscriptions survive. Skeptics argue that much of the legend rests on unreliable documentation, yet physical evidence complicates dismissal. Coconut fiber has been documented in the flood tunnel systems. Coconut trees do not grow in Nova Scotia. At various depths, fragments of parchment bearing ink have been recovered. Metal traces, gold and silver particles have been detected in borehole samples. Radiocarbon dating of some wooden platforms suggests construction long before 1795. These findings suggest human activity at depth. But activity does not equal treasure. So who could have built such a structure? Theories abound. Pirates are often mentioned, Captain Kidd in particular. But pirate treasure, historically, was rarely buried in complex engineered shafts hundreds of feet deep. The labor and precision required far exceed practical piracy. Others suggest the Knights Templar, a medieval order rumored to have transported sacred artifacts to the New World centuries before Columbus. Supporters point to supposed Templar symbols discovered on the island and architectural parallels between Oak Island features and medieval European fortifications, but direct evidence remains speculative. Another theory proposes that the Money Pit concealed original manuscripts of Shakespeare hidden by secret societies. Others suggest religious artifacts, perhaps even the Ark of the Covenant. Each theory attempts to explain the scale of engineering, because the engineering, if authentic, is impressive. Flood tunnels angled precisely to channel seawater into the shaft at high tide, filter systems using layers of stone and fiber, structural platforms spaced evenly at intervals. Such a system implies knowledge of hydrology and structural reinforcement. But why go to such lengths? To protect treasure so thoroughly that recovery becomes nearly impossible? Or was the pit designed for another purpose entirely? Some researchers suggest that Oak Island may have been used for military storage during early colonial conflicts, hidden supplies or munitions protected from enemy capture. But the scale again challenges this idea. Excavations throughout the 19th and 20th centuries uncovered additional features across the island. Stone roads buried beneath earth, large boulders arranged in patterns, underground cavities not connected directly to the money pit. The island began to feel less like a simple burial site and more like a puzzle, and puzzles sustain obsession. Over time, Oak Island became a cultural phenomenon. Generations inherited the search. Companies formed, dissolved, and reformed. Modern drilling equipment replaced hand tools. Sonar mapping and borehole cameras scanned depths unreachable by early diggers. Yet each technological advance revealed complexity without resolution. One borehole camera reportedly captured images of wooden beams and what appeared to be chests at depth, but when excavators attempted to reach them, collapse destroyed the cavity. The island resists revelation. It swallows certainty. It complicates ambition. Standing on Oak Island today, you see gentle landscape. Nothing dramatic. No visible entrance to a vast underground chamber. Only grassy patches and guarded excavation sites. But beneath lies an intricate network of shafts, tunnels, and collapsed cavities layered over centuries of effort. What makes Oak Island uniquely enduring is not just the promise of treasure. It is the tension between evidence and outcome. There are signs of deliberate construction. There are traces of non-native materials. There are historical references suggesting activity, but there is no recovered hoard, no definitive artifact validating the grandest claims, which leaves the question suspended: was something extraordinary once hidden there, or has the legend itself become the treasure? Psychologists note that sunk cost fallacy drives long-term pursuits. When enormous time and money have been invested, abandoning the search becomes emotionally difficult. Each partial clue reinforces commitment. Each fragment of parchment hints at more. Oak Island may represent a case where mystery perpetuates itself, where belief in treasure fuels excavation, which creates new anomalies, which in turn reinforce belief. Yet even skeptics admit one thing: something happened on Oak Island before 1795. Someone dug, someone engineered, someone transported materials not native to the region. The question is not whether human activity occurred, it is why, and what was intended to remain buried. The 90-foot stone, now lost, remains symbolic, an inscription promising wealth. But without the original artifact, interpretation floats. Perhaps it read differently. Perhaps it was miscopied. Or perhaps it never existed at all. Yet the legend persists because it satisfies a deeper human impulse. We want hidden things. We want secrets beneath the earth. We want the idea that somewhere, beneath layers of effort and time, lies something transformative. Oak Island embodies that impulse. It stands as proof that mystery can endure not because of confirmed discovery, but because of perpetual near-discovery. Each excavation uncovers just enough to sustain hope, never enough to conclude. 2 centuries of digging, millions of dollars spent, lives lost, and still the earth keeps its answer. Maybe the treasure, if it ever existed, was removed long ago. Maybe the flood system was a defensive mechanism guarding something sacred or strategic. Or maybe the island is an elaborate natural formation misinterpreted by ambitious imaginations. Whatever the truth, Oak Island reminds us of something fundamental. Mystery thrives when effort meets resistance, when evidence appears but refuses completion, when a hole in the ground becomes a symbol. And so the oak trees still stand. The tides still move through hidden channels. And beneath the soil, whether empty or filled with forgotten relics, lies the echo of a question that has endured for over 200 years. Was something truly buried here? Or did the island itself bury the truth beneath layers of belief? Airports are designed for order. Every arrival is documented, every passport scanned, every identity verified against a system of records that spans continents. In the modern world, movement is measured. Borders are guarded by paperwork and databases. Which is why, in the summer of 1954, what happened at Tokyo's Haneda Airport felt so impossible. A man stepped off a flight carrying a passport from a country that did not exist. He was described as well-dressed, composed, and fluent in multiple languages. He approached customs with confidence, presenting documents that appeared authentic: passport, visa stamps, business papers. There was only one problem. The passport identified his nationality as Tarid. Officials paused. They had never heard of such a country. The man insisted it was located in Europe, between France and Spain, roughly where the Principality of Andorra sits today. He appeared genuinely confused when told that no such nation appeared on any map. According to the story, when handed a world atlas, he pointed confidently to the region and expressed frustration that Tarid was missing. He claimed it had existed for centuries. His passport reportedly bore multiple entry and exit stamps from other countries, suggesting previous international travel. His currency appeared legitimate. His documents were not amateur forgeries. Everything about him seemed real, except his country. Authorities detained him for questioning. They checked immigration records. They contacted embassies. They searched directories for corporations associated with his business papers. Nothing. No company. No nation. No record. The man reportedly grew increasingly agitated, insisting that this must be some kind of mistake, that his homeland was well established, that his travels had never before encountered confusion. Eventually, the story goes, he was placed in a hotel under guard while officials attempted to resolve the matter. And then, the next morning, he was gone. No forced window, no tampered lock, just absence. Vanished. Like the country he claimed to represent. The story has circulated for decades, often referred to as the Man from Toward. It appears in books of unsolved mysteries and in online forums dedicated to unexplained phenomena. But here is where the mystery shifts. Despite its widespread retelling, no official record has been conclusively located confirming the incident. No immigration log from 1954 referencing such a case has surfaced publicly. No contemporary newspaper articles document it, which raises a new question. Is the story itself a myth, or did something happen that never made official headlines? Some researchers suggest the tale may be rooted in a real incident involving a man detained for passport irregularities, later embellished into legend. Others propose it was a mistranslation or misinterpretation of an actual case involving forged documents. But the details, the calm demeanor, the precise pointing to Andorra's location, the disappearance from a guarded room, give the story an almost cinematic quality. It feels structured, symbolic, too clean. And yet, its persistence speaks to something deeper. The idea of a man arriving from a parallel reality where geopolitical borders differ slightly from ours is compelling. In that interpretation, Tarid could be an alternate version of Andorra, similar geography, different name. The man's frustration would make sense if, in his reality, Tarid existed as an independent nation. His documents would appear authentic because they were, just not in this world. Such speculation ventures far beyond conventional explanation, but it captures imagination precisely because it challenges something fundamental, the stability of identity. National borders feel fixed. Countries appear permanent. But history shows how fluid they can be. Nations dissolve, names change, empires fragment. What if Tarid was a misunderstanding of Tuareg, the name of a nomadic people in North Africa? What if it was a transliteration error? Language barriers often produce confusion in official settings. In 1954, international databases were not digital. Verification relied on telephone calls, telegrams, and physical directories. Delays were common. Miscommunication frequent. Perhaps the man carried forged documents from a defunct state or micronation. Europe's political map has shifted repeatedly over centuries. Minor principalities have risen and fallen with little trace. But if such a state existed in 1954, why is there no independent record? Another possibility is psychological. The man may have genuinely believed in a fictional homeland, a product of delusion. Mental health crises can produce elaborate alternative realities. But then how to explain the passport stamps and business papers? Forgeries were possible in the mid-20th century, especially in the post-war period. Black markets for identity documents thrived. He could have been a con artist, or a spy using fabricated credentials. Cold War tensions in 1954 were high. Intelligence agencies operated globally. A false nationality could obscure origin. If exposed, claiming confusion might delay interrogation. Yet disappearance from a guarded hotel room strains plausibility, unless the story exaggerated that detail. And here we confront something subtle. The tired narrative may reveal more about our fears than about any single event. It speaks to anxiety over bureaucratic certainty. We assume that identity can be verified absolutely, that nations exist solidly, that paperwork defines reality. But what if someone appears whose existence does not align with our system? The story resonates because it disrupts order. Imagine being the customs officer. You examine the passport. The paper feels authentic. The stamps appear legitimate. The traveler stands calmly before you, and yet the country listed does not exist. Is he mistaken? Are you mistaken? Does your map contain error? That moment of doubt is powerful. It destabilizes authority, and authority depends on confidence. The disappearance amplifies the myth. If the man simply remained detained and later deported, the story would end quietly. But vanishing suggests something beyond administrative error. It suggests dimensional slip, parallel worlds brushing briefly against each other. Such ideas have long captivated human imagination. Folklore across cultures tells of travelers from other realms, time slips, phantom visitors. The Towered story feels modern, but its structure echoes ancient motifs. A stranger arrives from elsewhere, claims origin beyond comprehension, then vanishes. It is archetypal. Whether factual or not, it persists because it fits narrative instinct. Researchers attempting to trace the story's origin have found references emerging prominently in the 1970s, decades after the alleged 1954 incident. Earlier documentation is sparse, which strengthens the possibility of myth evolution. But myth does not mean meaningless. Stories endure because they address collective curiosity. What if there are worlds nearly identical to ours, differing only in minor details? What if borders are not fixed, but conditional? What if identity is less stable than we assume? In an era when passports and citizenship define belonging, the idea of a person whose origin cannot be verified unsettles deeply. The man from Towered challenges bureaucratic confidence. He represents anomaly within system. And whether real or fictional, he embodies something timeless, the stranger at the gate whose existence forces us to question our map of reality. Perhaps the most telling detail is not the passport itself, it is his reaction. According to the legend, he was not evasive. He was confused, frustrated, as though the error lay not in his documents, but in the world confronting him. That inversion is powerful, because it suggests not deception, but displacement. Imagine insisting your home exists and being told it never did. Imagine watching officials shake their heads while you point to a region on the map you know intimately. The emotional weight of that scenario lingers, even if apocryphal. Today, Haneda Airport operates with seamless digital systems, biometric scans, instant database verification. It would be nearly impossible for a passport from a non-existent nation to pass initial screening, but in 1954, systems were slower, verification less centralized, confusion more plausible. Still, no confirmed archive has resolved the question, and so the story remains suspended between legend and possibility, between bureaucratic error and metaphysical anomaly. Perhaps the man from Towered never existed. Perhaps he was a composite of misunderstandings and embellished retellings, or perhaps briefly a traveler stepped across an unseen boundary between worlds, only to find that in this one his homeland was erased. He arrived. He presented himself. He was questioned. And then he was gone, leaving behind a single unsettling idea. What if the borders we trust are not as fixed as we believe? And what if, somewhere, someone else is telling a story about a traveler who arrived from a country called ours that does not exist on their map at all? There are mysteries that unfold in grand spaces, deserts, mountains, oceans. And then there are those that appear in places so ordinary that they feel impossible. A quiet harbor, wooden docks, narrow streets wrapped in morning fog. In the early decades of the 20th century, along the windswept tip of Cape Cod in Massachusetts, residents of Provincetown began reporting something strange. They called it the Black Flash. It was not a shipwreck, not a crime. not a known animal. It was movement, fast, silent, and dark, glimpsed at the edge of vision. The first reports were subtle. Fishermen claimed to see a shadow dart between docked boats at dusk, a shape crossing planks with impossible speed, vanishing before it could be followed. Lighthouse keepers described fleeting silhouettes at the base of towers. Night watchmen on the wharf reported hearing footsteps that ended abruptly when approached. The common thread was speed and silence. Witnesses described the figure as human-sized, though rarely seen clearly enough to confirm detail. Some claimed it appeared like a man in dark clothing. Others insisted it was more amorphous, like a smear of shadow against dim light. The phenomenon gained quiet notoriety in the 1930s and 1940s. Local newspapers referenced it cautiously, often framing it as rumor or playful speculation. Yet reports persisted across decades, coming from different individuals with no obvious connection. Provincetown itself is a place shaped by light and water. Fog rolls in thick from the Atlantic. Street lamps cast elongated shadows over narrow alleys. Wooden buildings creak under shifting temperatures. Under such conditions, perception can deceive. A moving cloud, a shifting beam of light, a stray animal darting between crates. The mind fills gaps quickly. But the black flash seemed to defy simple misinterpretation. Witnesses described its motion as too deliberate, too fast. Some reported it covering distances in seconds that would require sprinting. Others claimed it appeared not to run, but to glide. One fisherman recounted standing on a pier at dawn when a dark figure crossed from one side of the dock to the other, a span of nearly 30 feet in what felt like a blink. He searched immediately afterward. Nothing. No one. No footsteps on the sand below. In certain accounts, animals reacted before humans noticed anything. Dogs barked toward empty corners. Horses startled at unseen movement. These details complicate dismissal. Yet no photograph exists. No physical trace was ever documented. The black flash remains entirely anecdotal. So what could it be? Skeptics suggest peripheral vision illusions. Human eyes are sensitive to motion at the edges of sight. Low light conditions amplify this effect. Shadows appear to move independently. Combined fog, fatigue, and expectation, and fleeting shapes can feel vivid. There is also the phenomenon known as shadow people, commonly reported figures seen in transitional states between wakefulness and sleep. But many black flash sightings occurred outdoors during active hours. Another possibility lies in wildlife. Provincetown is home to raccoons, foxes, and other nocturnal animals capable of rapid movement. In dim light, their shapes might appear larger or distorted. Yet witnesses consistently describe the figure as upright, human-sized, not quadrupedal. Meteorological explanations have also been considered. Cape Cod's coastal atmosphere creates unusual light refraction effects. Fog can bend and diffuse light beams. Moving clouds can produce illusions of shifting forms. But again, repetition across decades suggests something more persistent than random optics. Some researchers have proposed that the black flash may be linked to local history. Provincetown has witnessed shipwrecks, drownings, maritime tragedies. The sea carries heavy memory. Folklore often transforms past trauma into apparition. In this view, the black flash could be a spectral echo, a cultural manifestation rather than physical entity. But folklore does not explain reports of speed and interaction with environment. There are accounts where ropes reportedly shifted as the figure passed. Lanterns flickered. Footsteps were heard distinctly before vanishing. Perhaps these embellishments grew over time. Stories tend to accumulate detail as they are retold. Yet the core image remains consistent, a dark form moving impossibly fast. Let us imagine the setting. It is pre-dawn. The harbor lies in gray stillness. Wooden boards damp with mist. A lighthouse beam rotates slowly across water. You stand alone on a dock, and from the corner of your eye, something streaks across the planks. Too fast to process. Gone before your head fully turns. You scan the area. Nothing. The mind does not easily accept incomplete perception. It seeks closure. It searches for explanation. And when none is found, the event lingers. Perhaps that is the black flash's power. It exists precisely at the threshold of perception, too quick for confirmation, too consistent to dismiss entirely. In modern times, surveillance cameras cover many public spaces, yet no clear recording of such a phenomenon has emerged. Either it no longer appears, or it was always tied to conditions unique to an earlier era, before electric lighting reduced shadow depth. Before constant illumination flattened darkness, the human brain is wired to detect movement. Evolution favored those who reacted quickly to peripheral shifts. That sensitivity can generate false positives, especially in environments rich with contrast and motion. Provincetown's docks, with their intersecting beams and shifting tides, create endless opportunities for visual misinterpretation. Still, the black flash occupies a peculiar category. It is not violent. It does not interact aggressively. It appears, moves, and vanishes, a presence defined by absence. Perhaps it represents something subtler than ghost or animal. Perhaps it reflects the tension between light and darkness inherent in coastal towns. Provincetown balances isolation with vibrancy. Its streets can feel empty and alive simultaneously. Fog erases edges. Water reflects shapes unpredictably. In such an environment, even ordinary motion can feel uncanny. But the consistency of witness descriptions suggests a shared experience, and shared experiences, even when subjective, shape collective memory. The black flash has become part of Provincetown's lore. Tour guides mention it casually. Locals recount stories passed down from grandparents. Skeptics roll their eyes. Believers nod quietly. No one claims to have captured it definitively, which preserves its mystique. Unlike Oak Island's pit or long-used caverns, the black flash leaves no architecture behind. It leaves only narrative. And narrative is powerful. It travels faster than shadow. Perhaps the phenomenon has faded with time. Electric lights brighten the harbor now. Tourists crowd streets at night. Constant motion reduces opportunity for solitary encounters. Or perhaps it was always rare, glimpsed only under specific atmospheric and psychological conditions. We may never know. What we do know is this. For decades, multiple individuals in a small coastal town reported seeing something that moved too quickly to follow, too dark to define, too silent to pursue, and that alone sustains the mystery. Because whether illusion, animal, atmospheric effect, or something less conventional, the black flash forces us to confront the fragility of perception. We assume we see clearly. We trust our eyes. But sometimes, something crosses our vision that resists interpretation, and in that fraction of a second between sight and understanding, a story is born. Provincetown still stands at the edge of the Atlantic. Fog still rolls in without warning. Shadows still stretch long across docks at dusk. And perhaps, just at the corner of someone's eye, a dark shape still moves faster than explanation, gone before confirmation, leaving behind only a lingering question. Was it ever there at all? Or does the mind sometimes create motion where certainty cannot keep up? There are sounds the ocean makes that we understand. The crash of waves against rock, the groan of shifting ice, the distant churn of ship engines, the clicks and whistles of whales communicating across miles of dark water. And then, in 1997, the ocean made a sound no one could explain. It lasted less than a minute, but it was powerful enough to be detected thousands of kilometers apart. It came from deep within the Pacific, and it was called simply the bloop. The sound was recorded by underwater listening devices operated by the United States National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA. These hydrophones were originally installed to monitor submarine activity and seismic events. They listened constantly, mapping acoustic signatures across vast expanses of ocean. On a quiet day in the southern Pacific Ocean, sensors picked up an anomaly. The signal was ultra-low frequency, below the range of human hearing without technological conversion. When sped up and amplified, it resembled a deep, rising groan or a massive underwater howl. What made it extraordinary was its volume. The bloop was louder than any known marine animal sound ever recorded, louder than blue whales, louder than known tectonic shifts in that region. The signal originated somewhere near 50 degrees south, 100 degrees west, a remote stretch of ocean west of South America, far from major shipping lanes, far from coastal activity. It did not repeat regularly. It was not part of a pattern. It simply appeared in the data. and then it was gone. Scientists began analysis immediately. Ocean acoustics is a specialized field. Researchers can differentiate between ice cracking, submarine volcanic activity, earthquakes, and biological calls based on frequency patterns and duration. The bloop did not align cleanly with known categories. Its frequency curve resembled biological sound more than geological, a rapid rise in frequency over about 1 minute. That characteristic intrigued researchers. Because biological sounds often involve frequency modulation, animals changing pitch to communicate, but if the bloop were biological, the source would have to be enormous. The intensity suggested a creature larger than any known marine species. Speculation exploded almost instantly. Newspapers described it as a monster sound. Some suggested an undiscovered leviathan lurking in abyssal depths. Popular culture linked it to fictional sea monsters, ancient creatures sleeping beneath the ocean floor. But scientists urged caution. The ocean is vast and poorly explored, yet extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. The location of the bloop's origin added intrigue. It lay near the Antarctic Circumpolar Current, a powerful ring of water circulating around Antarctica. Ice shelves break and shift in this region. Massive chunks of ice fracture and drift, producing acoustic events. Still, the bloop's acoustic signature did not perfectly match typical icequake patterns documented at the time. In the years following the initial recording, NOAA continued monitoring the region. Additional sounds with somewhat similar characteristics were recorded, though none matched the intensity of the original bloop. Gradually, a hypothesis gained traction. The sound likely originated from a large icequake, the cracking and fracturing of Antarctic ice shelves. Ice cracking underwater can produce complex acoustic signatures. When enormous sheets fracture and slide, they release energy across a broad frequency range. As research improved, scientists identified other ice-generated sounds that resembled the bloop in waveform. In 2012, NOAA released a statement concluding that the bloop was most likely caused by icequake activity. The mystery, they suggested, was resolved. But resolution does not always erase fascination, because the bloop was not merely loud, it was uniquely patterned. The human mind gravitates toward anomalies, and the idea that something vast and unknown could inhabit deep ocean trenches remains compelling. The deep ocean is one of Earth's least explored environments. More of the moon's surface has been mapped in detail than the abyssal plains of the Pacific. Pressure at those depths is crushing. Light does not penetrate. Life evolves under conditions difficult to imagine. Bioluminescent creatures drift through darkness. Giant squid, once considered myth, were only recently documented alive. So when a sound emerges from deep water that defies immediate classification, imagination fills the silence. Consider the environment near the bloop's origin. The southern Pacific is remote beyond comprehension, thousands of kilometers from land. Storms sweep across uninterrupted. Waves rise to towering heights. Below the surface, trenches descend deeper than Mount Everest is tall. If something massive moved in those depths, we would likely never see it directly, only hear it. Sound travels exceptionally well underwater. Low-frequency waves can propagate across entire ocean basins. The bloop was detected by sensors separated by over 5,000 kilometers. That alone conveys its magnitude, and yet only once at that scale. If biological, why not repeated calls? If geological, why so singular? Icequakes can vary in intensity. Large ice shelf fractures are not daily occurrences. Climate variability influences stress patterns in polar regions. Perhaps the bloop captured a particularly dramatic event. But something about its tone, when converted to audible range, evokes something organic. A drawn-out, rising call. It lingers in memory, partly because humans are wired to respond to sound emotionally. Low frequencies trigger instinctive reactions. They vibrate through body and environment. They feel immense. The bloop felt immense. After its recording, researchers combed through historical hydrophone data. No identical signature appeared before 1997. Subsequent years produced icequake sounds that resembled it, but the original remained distinctive. Marine biologists also considered known species. Blue whales produce calls that travel thousands of kilometers, but their frequency and pattern differ from the bloop's shape. Fin whales, sperm whales, none matched. And the energy required for a biological organism to generate such amplitude would imply extraordinary size. Could a colossal, undiscovered creature exist? Theoretically, the deep ocean contains niches yet unexplored. But ecosystems operate under constraints. Energy availability limits size. The largest animals we know, whales, feed in nutrient-rich zones. The abyss is comparatively sparse. Gigantism exists in deep-sea species, but within limits. A creature large enough to produce the bloop's intensity would require substantial resources. Still, absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. The ocean guards its secrets carefully. Perhaps the bloop remains compelling because it touches on scale. The Earth is vast. The oceans cover more than 70% of its surface, and beneath that surface lies a world largely unseen. When a sound emerges from that darkness, it reminds us how incomplete our map truly is. Even if the icequake explanation is correct, the event underscores something humbling. Ice sheets thousands of meters thick fracture and release energy comparable to our most dramatic imagined creatures. Nature itself produces sounds that rival myth. In that sense, the bloop is not less mysterious because it is natural. It is perhaps more so because it reveals how powerful and dynamic our planet remains beyond immediate perception. Imagine listening through hydrophones suspended in endless water, static hum, distant whale calls, minor seismic tremors. And then, suddenly, a massive, rising signal floods the instruments. Operators lean forward. They replay it, analyze it. For a moment, uncertainty grips them. What was that? That moment of not knowing carries weight. Because in the modern era, we expect explanation quickly. We expect classification. But sometimes the first encounter with something new precedes understanding by years. The bloop may now reside comfortably in scientific explanation as an icequake, yet its legacy persists in cultural memory. It became shorthand for the unknown in the deep. It inspired documentaries, fiction, and speculation. Because even when explained, it opened a window briefly into the vast acoustic wilderness of the ocean. And perhaps that is its true significance. Not that it proved a monster, but that it reminded us monsters are not always necessary. The Earth itself is capable of sounds so immense they resemble living titans. Somewhere in the southern Pacific, ice cracked, energy surged through water, hydrophones captured the vibration, and for a moment humanity listened to something it had never heard before. The ocean returned to quiet afterward. Waves continued, currents flowed, and deep beneath, life carried on unnoticed. But the recording remains. A low-frequency howl from the deep. A reminder that beneath calm surfaces lie forces we are still learning to interpret. And perhaps, somewhere out there, other sounds wait. Recorded only once, understood years later, carrying with them the echo of how little we truly know about the world below. There is a book that sits behind glass in a climate-controlled room at Yale University's Beinecke Rare Book and Manuscript Library. Its cover is unremarkable. Its pages are worn but intact. Its script flows in careful, looping lines across nearly every sheet, and for more than a century of study, no one has been able to read it. It is known as the Voynich manuscript. Carbon dating places its parchment in the early 15th century, roughly between 1404 and 1438. The ink appears consistent with that period. The binding is old but genuine. Nothing about its physical construction suggests a modern forgery. Yet the language inside does not correspond to any known script. The manuscript contains over 200 pages filled with text written in an unknown alphabet. The characters repeat in structured patterns, suggesting linguistic rules. Words cluster with statistical regularity similar to natural language. Paragraphs form. Margins align. There are no obvious corrections, as though the writer was fluent. Interwoven with the text are illustrations. Strange plants that resemble no known species, circular diagrams that look astronomical, pages filled with nude female figures bathing in green liquid, connected by elaborate networks of tubes and pools. Fold-out charts that resemble star maps or cosmological wheels. The book appears intentional, coherent, complex, but unreadable. The manuscript first entered recorded history in the 17th century when it was owned by a scholar named Georg Berisch in Prague. Later, it passed through the hands of Jesuit polymath Athanasius Kircher, a man known for his attempts to decipher Egyptian hieroglyphs. Kircher reportedly tried to decode it, but no solution survives. Centuries later, in 1912, a Polish book dealer named Wilfrid Voynich purchased the manuscript from a Jesuit college near Rome. He believed he had found something extraordinary, possibly a lost work by the medieval philosopher Roger Bacon. Voynich's excitement ignited scholarly interest. Cryptographers, linguists, historians all began examining the text. World War I code breakers tried their skills against it. World War II cryptanalysts revisited it with modern methods. None succeeded. The manuscript resists interpretation. At first glance, one might assume it is a simple cipher. Replace each symbol with a letter, break the code, translate the message, but the frequency patterns complicate that approach. The text exhibits properties consistent with real languages. Certain words appear more frequently at the beginnings of lines. Some symbols cluster predictably. Statistical analysis shows that the text is not random gibberish. It behaves like meaningful language. But what language? Some scholars propose that it represents a constructed language, an early artificial tongue designed to encode knowledge. Others suggest it is a phonetic transcription of an existing language using a unique alphabet. The illustrations add further complexity. The botanical section contains detailed plant drawings, yet none match known species precisely. Some appear as composites, roots from one plant, leaves from another, flowers that resemble nothing identifiable. The astronomical section includes zodiac-like diagrams with familiar constellations, such as Pisces and Sagittarius, represented alongside unfamiliar imagery. The biological section, if that is what it is, shows interconnected tubes and pools populated by small female figures. Some interpret these as alchemical symbols. Others see early anatomical exploration. Still others suspect metaphorical or mystical content. If the manuscript were a hoax, it would be a remarkably elaborate one. Creating over 200 pages of structured text with consistent linguistic patterns requires immense effort. Why undertake such labor without clear reward? Skeptics argue that the manuscript could have been created as a sophisticated forgery intended to deceive wealthy collectors in Renaissance Europe. Elaborate hoaxes were not unheard of, but carbon dating undermines the idea of a modern fake. The parchment is genuinely medieval, the ink consistent with age. Unless someone in the 15th century deliberately crafted an undecipherable book as a hoax and somehow anticipated centuries of scrutiny, the forgery explanation weakens. Modern technology has only deepened the mystery. High-resolution scans allow researchers worldwide to examine every page in detail. Computational linguists have applied machine learning algorithms to detect patterns. Some analyses suggest the text may encode a natural language through systematic vowel removal or substitution. Others argue that the statistical distribution could be artificially generated through algorithmic-like methods, such as repeatedly modifying words with small variations. In 2019, a teen proposed that the manuscript was written in a form of abbreviated Hebrew. Another suggested it encoded Proto-Romance language. Each claim gained temporary attention. None achieved consensus. Because when tested across the entire manuscript, inconsistencies reappear. Translation attempts produce partial coherence followed by breakdown. Patterns align briefly, then dissolve. It is as though the manuscript sits precisely at the boundary between language and illusion. Imagine being the original author. You sit at a desk in the early 1400s. You write in a script no one else uses. You draw plants that do not exist, or perhaps exist only in distant lands unknown to your audience. Are you encoding secret knowledge, medical remedies, alchemy, astronomy, or are you documenting imagination itself? One theory suggests the manuscript may represent a medical or herbal compendium from a marginalized region, written in a dialect lost to time. If the language community disappeared without record, their script might survive without context. History has lost entire languages before. The manuscript could be the sole remaining artifact of one such tongue. But then why no external references? Why no marginal notes from later readers attempting translation? Another possibility is psychological. Some scholars propose that the manuscript may have been created by someone experiencing altered perception, perhaps compiling symbolic imagery driven by inner vision rather than external taxonomy. But again, the linguistic consistency challenges random creativity. It is too structured, too disciplined. Even the spacing between words follows patterns. If nonsense, it is sophisticated nonsense. The Voynich manuscript fascinates because it presents us with something tangible yet inaccessible. You can see it, touch it, with permission, examine every letter. But meaning remains sealed. Unlike lost ruins buried underground, this mystery sits openly in light, yet it refuses interpretation. The psychological effect is powerful. Humans crave decoding. We want to translate, to convert symbol into understanding. When faced with an unreadable text, especially one so meticulously crafted, we feel compelled to solve it. It becomes a puzzle of identity. If we can read it, we prove mastery over obscurity. But perhaps the manuscript's endurance lies precisely in its resistance. Every generation believes it possesses tools superior to the last, new algorithms, new analytical frameworks. And each generation encounters the same barrier. The text remains silent. What if the manuscript was never meant to be widely read? What if it was a personal cipher, meaningful only to its author and perhaps a small circle of initiates? If so, the key may have vanished with them. Keys are fragile. Once lost, even the most systematic code becomes impenetrable. Standing before the manuscript today, you might feel something subtle. Not fear, not awe, but curiosity tinged with humility. Because here lies proof that knowledge can exist beyond our reach. That a human mind structured these pages deliberately, and yet we cannot follow its logic. Perhaps someday a breakthrough will occur. A linguistic parallel discovered. A cipher key uncovered in another archive. Or perhaps the manuscript will remain unread, a testament to the limits of interpretation. In an age when nearly every text can be translated instantly by machine, the Voynich manuscript endures as anomaly, an island of silence in a sea of comprehension. Its pages turn, its symbols flow, its illustrations invite analysis. But the meaning, if meaning exists, waits patiently, and in that waiting, it reminds us that not all knowledge yields to persistence. Some texts remain closed, not because they lack content, but because context has dissolved, leaving behind ink, parchment, and a question that continues to echo through centuries. What story is written here, and why does it refuse to be told? In 1977, in the quiet countryside of Ohio, a radio telescope was listening. It was not searching for ghosts or monsters or hidden treasure. It was scanning the sky for patterns, for narrowband radio signals that might suggest something artificial, something deliberate. The telescope was part of a project known as SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. Its mission was simple in theory and monumental in scope. Listen to the cosmos long enough, and perhaps one day it will answer back. On the night of August 15, 1977, it did. The telescope, known as the Big Ear, was fixed in position. It did not track objects across the sky. Instead, Earth's rotation slowly carried different sections of the universe through its field of view. As stars drifted overhead, the instrument recorded radio intensity across various frequencies. The data was printed out on long sheets of computer paper, rows of numbers and letters representing signal strength. Days later, as astronomer Jerry Amon reviewed the printout, something caught his eye. A sequence stood out sharply from the surrounding noise, 66JJ5. He circled it in red ink and wrote a single word beside it, "Wow." That scribbled reaction became the name of the event, the WOW signal. What made it extraordinary was not just its strength, but its precision. The signal was extremely narrow-band, concentrated at a very specific frequency of 1420, 45.6 MHz. That frequency is significant. It corresponds closely to the hydrogen line, a natural emission frequency of neutral hydrogen atoms. Hydrogen is the most abundant element in the universe. If an advanced civilization wanted to transmit a signal intended to be recognized by others, broadcasting near the hydrogen line would make sense. It is a cosmic landmark, a frequency any radio-capable species would likely study. The WOW signal lasted for 72 seconds, the exact amount of time the Big Ear could observe a fixed point in the sky before Earth's rotation moved it out of view. It never repeated. And that is where the mystery begins. The signal's intensity rose and fell in a smooth curve, matching what would be expected from a distant source passing through the telescope's reception beam. It did not flicker randomly. It did not scatter across frequencies like natural cosmic noise. It behaved like something controlled. Researchers immediately attempted to detect it again. They aimed telescopes back toward the region of the sky from which it appeared to originate, near the constellation Sagittarius. Nothing. They tried days later. Nothing. Years later. Nothing. The signal never returned. Skeptics proposed interference from Earth-based sources, perhaps a satellite, perhaps military communication. But narrowband transmissions at that precise hydrogen frequency are heavily regulated, and the signal appeared to come from deep space, not from Earth's surface. Others suggested a passing comet. Comets contain hydrogen clouds that could theoretically emit at similar frequencies. In 2016, researchers proposed that two comets, 266P, Christensen, and P 2008Y2 Gibbs may have been in the region of the sky at the time. Follow-up observations detected radio emissions from these comets, but the strength and characteristics did not fully match the WOW signal's profile. The debate continues. To understand the weight of the WOW signal, imagine the context. In 1977, computers were primitive by modern standards. Data analysis was largely manual. Researchers did not have automated pattern recognition scanning millions of frequencies in real time. The big ear was listening patiently, one narrow slice of sky at a time. And in all the hours it listened before and after, it detected nothing comparable. Just once, 72 seconds. Then silence. The probability of a random natural source producing such a narrow band spike at precisely that frequency, in that manner, is low. Not impossible, but low. And so the signal lingers in scientific limbo, not confirmed extraterrestrial, not conclusively terrestrial, just unexplained. The human mind struggles with one-time events. If the signal had repeated, scientists could triangulate its origin, measure its distance, analyze its modulation. But a single instance offers limited data. It becomes a snapshot without context. Some argue that if it were a deliberate transmission, perhaps it was not meant to repeat. Maybe it was a sweep, a scanning beam crossing our solar system once, like a lighthouse rotating slowly in the cosmic dark. Or perhaps it was an accidental leak, the equivalent of a stray broadcast not intended for us. Civilizations might use radio briefly before transitioning to more advanced communication methods. The window during which two civilizations overlap technologically could be extremely narrow. The WOW signal may represent coincidence across vast timescales, or it may represent nothing more than a rare natural anomaly. The region of sky from which it appeared contains many stars. But at the estimated distance, even the strongest terrestrial transmitters would appear faint. To produce the intensity recorded, a transmitter would need to be powerful, or relatively close. The lack of repetition complicates both possibilities. Consider the emotional reaction of the astronomer. Jerry Amon did not write "wow" casually. He had reviewed countless sheets of data. He knew what ordinary noise looked like. When he circled that sequence, he recognized something extraordinary, not proof, but anomaly. And anomaly is the seed of discovery. The WOW signal embodies attention at the heart of scientific exploration. We seek patterns in noise. We develop criteria for significance, but the universe does not conform neatly to our expectations. If intelligent life exists elsewhere, statistically likely given the scale of the cosmos, detecting it may require patience beyond generations. Radio waves weaken over distance, signals degrade. Interstellar interference scatters transmission, perhaps the WOW signal was a fleeting intersection of beam and receiver, a momentary alignment across unimaginable space. Or perhaps it was entirely natural, a rare astrophysical event not yet fully categorized. Since 1977, SETI projects have expanded dramatically. Radio telescopes scan continuously. Advanced algorithms parse data for anomalies. Yet nothing with the clarity and intrigue of the WOW signal has emerged. Plenty of false positives, plenty of interference, but no 72-second hydrogen line spike rising cleanly above the cosmic background. That uniqueness gives the signal its staying power. It remains the most famous candidate in the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, not because it proves anything, but because it refuses dismissal. Imagine standing under a clear night sky. You look up at thousands of stars, each one potentially hosting planets, perhaps oceans, perhaps life. You wonder whether somewhere, someone else is also looking outward. And then imagine that for 72 seconds, across 120 trillion kilometers of space, something aligned. A transmission, intentional or accidental, passed through Earth. Our telescope happened to be listening. And then the alignment ended. Forever. The idea is humbling and haunting. But we must balance imagination with restraint. Extraordinary hypotheses require extraordinary evidence. And the wow signal, while compelling, remains a single data point. Still, its existence reshapes perspective. It reminds us that the cosmos is not silent. It hums with radiation, with pulsars, with background microwave whispers from the Big Bang. Within that hum, we search for structure, for intent, for the faint suggestion that we are not alone. The wow signal may ultimately be categorized definitively as cometary hydrogen, instrumental artifact, or something else entirely. Or it may remain one of those rare anomalies that resist closure. A message without sender, a detection without repetition, a question mark embedded in cosmic static. The Big Ear telescope was dismantled in 1998, its fields now quiet, but the datasheet with 6EQJ5 circled in red still exists. A simple printout, a handwritten exclamation, proof that for a brief moment the universe surprised us. And perhaps that is the deeper significance, not that we heard aliens, not that we confirmed intelligence beyond Earth, but that in our listening, we encountered something we did not expect, something that defied immediate explanation. And in that defiance, it reminded us that the universe is vast enough to hold mystery still beyond our comprehension. For 72 seconds, a signal crossed the void. We noticed. We recorded it. We asked questions. And the sky returned to silence, leaving us with one enduring thought. If the cosmos did speak once, are we still listening carefully enough to hear it again?